Hey everybody, welcome to Hash Church, episode 94. We are here at the Vancouver Hemp and Cannabis Conference, and we're going to put you over to our introduction here. Boom.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're about
episode 94. Oh shit.
Future.
Cannabis Conference.
Well, at least we know it works.
We're going to put you over to our intro. There's a delay on a live feed, yeah.
We're about to take you to church, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, northwest corner of the auditorium, convention center, conference room, Bayshore, banquet room. If you've logged on to YouTube at 9 o'clock in the morning on Sundays over the last 2 years, you'll undoubtedly find yourself glued to the screen for 3 to 4 hours of Hash Church on the Bubbleman's World Channel, just like hundreds of other hash connoisseurs and enthusiasts. Bubbleman, aka Marcus Richardson, creator and owner of Bubble Bags and recognized cannabis extraction expert, and a weekly panel of industry leaders, scholars, patients, and other supporters of cannabis extracts from around the world, serve as a weekly sermon on cannabis concentrates. Now it is Sunday, so Bubbleman himself is going to do a very live special episode right here and right now, or at least going to give it a shot. You never know what amazing things you will learn by tuning into an episode of Hash Church. This one could be especially epic, considering all the people who are in the building today. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you're going to enjoy this. Please welcome to the Cannabis Hemp Conference demo stage, Marcus Richardson, Bubbleman, for Hash Church number 94.
All right.
Have a great show, Bob.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, I'm here with my good friend Joel Podersky. He is the co-founder of Craft Cannabis Association of British Columbia. I hope that you guys can all hear me before we get Joel to talk. I just want to do a little confirmation that all the links are working and that you guys are able to hear us. Let's confirm. Can you guys hear us okay? Are we listening? Yes, good, wonderful. Well, welcome, Joel.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, nice to have you on Hash Church. There's Todd McCormick just came into the room. We got Wood Thrush in the room. We're definitely going to talk a little bit about PTSD today as well. Todd's going to talk a little bit about Chalice. Hemp Guy is in the room. Always appreciated to see Mr. Skunkman Sam in the room. But we're going to pass it over to Joel, and we're going to have Joel discuss a little bit about what he was discussing yesterday on stage with a really wonderful panel. It was sort of MMAR as well as MMPR, a combination of both, and I'll pass it over to Joel.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. Yesterday we did a little bit of a talk, a little bit of a panel here at the conference about small, medium-sized producers, LPs, the dynamics of that whole world. And I was fortunate enough to get up on stage with someone who is here representing an LP, Medigreen, to be precise, and have him literally stand arm in arm, sharing a mic, delivering exactly the same message to the crowd. And I think that's really important. You know, the one message that we wanted to convey yesterday was that all of the other Jedi Knights in and around this world right now that are like Cannabis, Craft Cannabis Association of British Columbia, CGC, CTAC, and all the other ones out there, as well as our brothers and sisters in the LP world who feel the same way about the coming oligopoly as we do. And that's a very, very important point. There are people out there that are like that. These conversations can happen. It's very important that they happen. And it's basically just a call to everybody and anybody who feels this way, who does not want to see oligopoly. Doesn't matter what their position is in the industry. Who wants... Go ahead. Yeah. Who want communities not to be harmed by centralization of the industry going forward after legalization, who do not want a dishonest approach in regulation and statute development, to find each other, come together, and really see each other as brothers and sisters, and put aside egos, put aside professional differences, put aside all kinds of squabbling that's going on, so that we can really affect what we want to affect and really get what we want to get, because we can have it. We're entitled.
Absolutely. It's nice to see the MMAR and the MMPR kind of working together rather than what has naturally occurred, which is Health Canada played both sides against one another. LPs and MMAR felt like they were on different sides of the fence, but as we slowly tear the fence down, we understand that you know, we're on the same side. It's we need to work together. It's about more access, not limited access. and it's about letting the majority of the people who have been involved in this industry for the last 40+ years to at least get a chance to be involved in the industry.
That's exactly it, Mark. It's about being human. It's not about artificial division lines. It's not about being the CEO of a large corporation or just an outdoor grower. It's about humans, and everybody has a role to play. Everybody just needs to follow their heart and move forward in unity and stop the squabbling, stop the infighting. And there may be forces out there that want to try to, usurp those who have been operating this industry for decades and quite simply have the right to continue to do so, and not just the right to continue to do so for themselves, but with all of the. There we go. Sorry,
the mic's no good. So just talking to that one. With all the
benefits that are reached by local communities and by the tens of thousands, potentially more than 100,000 people here in British Columbia alone, who work in this industry and who break no other law in their lives except that they work in this industry in some capacity. And that is something that the government needs to acknowledge, that the small number of corporations that are cooperating with the policy of oligopoly need to acknowledge as well. And if we come together and let them know with a unified voice that that is in fact what we want, then we're not just a bunch of lobbyists in one room, a whole bunch of other lobbyists.
Yeah.
We're constituents. We're the constituents that are voting for these people, that are on the local level, the provincial level, the federal level, are saying, we don't want this.
Yeah.
If we write letters, make phone calls, to your municipal representatives, your provincial representatives, your federal representatives, then we could have a tidal wave of people that are just saying, we don't want this.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I would add as I'm reading the chat room as you're talking is, it doesn't serve any purpose, Pangea, to say things like fuck Tweed or fuck Tilray. These are just large companies trying to sell cannabis to patients. I think if you have a focus, it's better to focus on the positive. These companies are giving access to patients. So great, let them do that. In the meantime, the rest of us should focus on what we want to get done, not what we want to see, not get done, if that makes any sense. We need to understand that the division is what's keeping us from moving forward, and if we were able to work together, we would have a much easier time in navigating this particular landscape, at this point in time, which is not an easy landscape to navigate. But here in Canada, which has been kind of a really sort of a bonus for us, is although it's been very slow moving, we do have a federal program, and we do generally get everything we want in the end.
In the end, yes.
We usually, it's very rare that it's like, wait a minute. Like, they came in with the MMPR, and I was like, whoa. This will be the first time they ever moved backwards in the entire 20 years of this program. They've never taken anything away. And in fact, we fought them in court, and they were unable to take it away. Exactly. So all those people maintained their MMAR licenses. Sure, they stunted a lot of other people's abilities to get those licenses, which was unfortunate because I did feel a lot of people were like, oh, I got mine, hopefully they grandfather me in. And I was kind of like, no, that's unacceptable. Yeah. That is completely unacceptable to be grandfathered in when you could be fighting still for everyone else's right to do what you have permission to do.
Well, that's exactly it.
And, can I ask a question?
A number of important points there, Mark, and one is to focus on the positive, and instead of focusing on the dividing lines, focus on the bridges that are being built here. That is not just between people in the independent marketplace, but also the same way this issue as we do, and just because there are a few that don't, it doesn't mean we need to vilify each other. It doesn't mean we need to focus on trying to tear each other down and thinking that this is a war where we have enemies all around us, because as much as there may be enemies for many of us all around on both sides, there are a whole ton of allies, and it's a lot easier and a lot nicer, and you get a lot farther by focusing on your allies than focusing on your enemies.
Absolutely. I just, sorry about that, guys. I had typed something. I wanted to welcome Etienne into the room, welcome Sam and Todd and Wood Thrush again as well. And when I typed in the Google chat, it muted the mic, so that's why you got a slight bit of dead air while Joel was talking. So we apologize. We do have an incredible sound man who's been working non-stop trying to get all this logistics. Todd, you'd be super stoked on this. We got a sound man, Todd. So what's in the future for craft cannabis?
We're focusing on a consumer campaign at the moment. It'll continue through the summer. We produced some videos up until now. We'll have some more coming. We're organizing our volunteer list. People are volunteering from all over the province to do some local organizing. The number one thing that people can do right now, today, without having to interact with anybody, is phone and write letters to your local representatives, municipal, provincial, federal. Go to craftcannabis.ca, sign up. Go to Facebook, like us on Facebook, sign up for volunteering, and hopefully, collaboration will continue to happen too. This conference, for all of you who are not here, is been like a catalytic event and not just a conference. There has been so many different people from so many diverse areas of this industry, whether they be, Tilray or us and CTAC and dispensaries and anybody you can imagine. Everyone, the list of scientists here alone is unbelievably impressive. The gamut that people here are running is truly heartening to see. So hopefully that will, not hopefully, but it will lead to good things in the future. So if everybody can put some good energy into that, good energy into people coming together here and coming together everywhere in this country. Coming together is the key. Unity is the key. Absolutely. And we can just make things happen. If we come together, then magic will start happening. We don't have to worry. We don't have to be insecure. We just simply have to have unity, and we have to, as much as we possibly can, be in the space of the heart, come from the space of the heart, and do what this plant wants us to do. This is a healing plant, and its healing energy needs to come to this planet. It needs to be manifested in this planet in all of its potential. So we need to manifest that first in order to be the stewards of this plant's healing potential.
Did you have a question, Todd?
Well, it was...
Shit, I can't hear him now.
Now you can't hear me.
I'm no good.
Uh-oh. I'm talking, testing, 1, 2, 3.
I can hear you, Todd.
Okay, that's great. You can hear me from the other room.
Hi, John.
John, can you hear
Let's
me?
see if I can't pick you guys up at all.
Woodbrush, can you hear me?
We can all hear each other. We can't hear. Bubbleman can't hear us, apparently.
I can't hear anyone else in the room talking.
I'll just hold your time.
Connected to the HDMI, so that the sound's going through there now.
Tell everybody, this is what happens when we get a sound.
He can talk to the room.
Check your output from your computer to your headphones.
Mark's just behind us over there on House Church, guys.
This is great.
Which is quite awesome. But I mean, this event here, guys, is really fantastic.
John, you're looking healthy.
Fantastic. I've been eating a lot of CBD lately.
My friend in Northern California says he can hear us. That's pretty funny.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Headphone jack is.
Can you hear us, Bubbleman? No, can't hear us yet.
We'll figure it out. Don't worry.
Well, basically, everybody, just continuing on what they were saying, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. So if you want to get involved...
Sorry, guys, I am unable to hear anyone. I'm sure you can hear me, but all of this HDMI and all these different cables, it's just, I don't know what to say. It's a
I can bring you
show.
my computer so you can listen,
Not
Mark.
hearing anything that anyone says in the room. It's beautiful.
So what I'm going to do, just because...
Thanks for joining us for Hash Church today, everybody. That was 14 minutes, a little bit shorter than the last 17-minute episode. But if I can't hear anyone, there's probably no point.
Run, Johnny, run!
Here, Mark. If you use my laptop...
I got it.
Got it?
I got it.
Hey, can you hear us?
Great. This is great.
All right.
Johnny was running with his computer to make sure it didn't get shut off.
I'm like, okay, guys.
All right.
We're going to make this
Thank you,
work.
Johnny B.
You know what? I'm going to walk you guys around
It
now.
was almost a short Hash Church.
Oh, good call, Marcus.
Anyway,
Good save.
I'm Sharon.
Good job, sound guy. Okay,
Yeah,
so
we've
what
been
else?
on this for an hour and a half trying to make this work, so I'm glad that
It's
we're
working.
pushing through.
So you can
We're
actually hear
pushing
me now? You can hear me, Mark?
I can hear you now. Yep.
My statement is that when we're talking about legal medical use in Canada, it kind of is it blows my mind that you have to get approved. I mean, I wish I got approved to get cancer. That would have really changed my childhood. My mom might have said no to cancer, is what I'm saying. So If you're sick, there's really a bureaucratic process that can tell you no, you don't get cannabis in Canada.
Well, yes and no, right? They've fought it. There's 45,000 MMARs.
Yes, something like that.
So we have about 45,000 people that are federally exempt in Canada to grow their own medicine. And then it's a little bit easier to go and get the MMPR, which is really just permission to buy cannabis. At the same time, you know, the division between those two things is that the price obviously is expensive. There's also dispensaries, but the majority of the dispensaries are also very expensive. You can go in there and find things for very, very high prices. So we're definitely not in a great situation, but we're working it every day. And I think that what Joel's doing, the sort of combination, what Hilary Black is doing, having a foot in both worlds, acknowledging the LPs but not alienating them, not not creating a division like so many people want to naturally do. It's not helping bashing on the LPs. They're just companies. If you want to bash on Health Canada. They actually make the rules. And as much as you might think this, the LPs do not make the rules. Health Canada does not listen to LPs. And Health Canada treats LPs just like they treat everyone else, like they're little bitches. So don't think that LPs have much more power just because they have all that money invested. They still have to jump through the most ridiculous flaming hoops. It's really bizarre, the situation we've come across.
But can I bring this up? This really does bring the point to that this is a continuing struggle for equal rights. This is not just about getting rights. It's about civil rights and having equal rights and respecting a culture that has existed for decades, if not longer, in North America.
That's a point that needs not to be lost on the regulators and the lawmakers, because quite simply, if that was the case in this industry, why exactly are we not allowed to open retail banks next week?
Yeah. You know, to bring up the banks, major problems with the banks throughout the U.S. State laws are purveying, but federal law is still in control, and the banks are afraid of it. I myself had my own bank of 20 years recently because I applied for a Blue River credit card, put all of my accounts, my personal accounts, my Fresh Headies accounts, my Full Mel Glass accounts, all of my companies have been put in review by the Royal Bank of Canada because they've decided that the business and the marketing that I'm doing is maybe a little suspect. And I'm like, I've been doing business with you guys for 20 years. And so I am very much looking forward to bending the Royal Bank over backwards and teaching them a few things about the education of this plant and how we need to move forward with it. I did it already with Monaris, which was the merchant account that tried to tell me I couldn't sell terpenes online because they contain THC. Well, after a few SC Labs readouts and some more flaming hoops to jump through, I bent them over backwards, and they actually gave me my merchant account. So we need to not be afraid of these groups. We need to face them head on. We cannot any longer hide from, trying, I have 4 different bank accounts. This one is my business. This one is... We have to move away from doing that and sit down with these people and explain to them that this is a legitimate business. It's going to be billions of dollars. You will not be able to avoid running this money through your banks. So I hope some of the banks are listening.
Definitely working with sound here, guys, but it'll work out.
Well, as one has been kicked out of 35 banks here in the United States, we'd love to see you guys make some headway because maybe it'll make our Federal Reserve, start to deal with us because, we're talking, 25 states here in the United States and we can't do any banking currently. So we feel your pain, man, altogether. It is beyond, like I said, 35. I've been kicked out of 35 banks.
Oh, with me, I don't even sell any with cannabis. I have the plasma, and I got raped by my bank. They wanted to know where the checks were. They said it was all cannabis related. I had to really educate them on what a plant is and stuff like that. So I think with the new process of legalization and stuff like that, I think something is going to have to start happening with our institutions and how we can deposit the money and stuff. Because really, in reality, it's a thriving business that's fueling this country, this world right now.
Absolutely. The banking is very important, as are the merchant account numbers, as are, all of the things that we're going to be engaging in. It really makes no sense to me, particularly in a country where we have federal law allowing cannabis, that my bank would say, oh, you sell products that may or may not be used with cannabis, we're putting your accounts into review. This is bullyism. This is the standard thing that the cannabis user has been, you know, if they're not kicking down our doors, if they're not smashing us over the heads with a baton, they're closing our bank accounts. They're making it very hard for us to do legal business. We want to pay taxes. We want to show them all the money. But if you can't put it into a bank, it makes it a little bit difficult to do that, as that is a very important part of their system for all of this, you know, business, tax, monetary gain. Let us in the banks is definitely is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. People in this industry, they want to be tax compliant.
Yeah.
And they're simply not allowed to. Tilray and Canopy have no problem opening bank accounts, any number of bank accounts that they want, any number of institutions, nationally or internationally. And the rest of us, they're not in that same kind of boat. My association, because we have cannabis in the name, is having a difficult time finding a bank that will actually allow us to open a bank account, even though we're a not-for-profit society with a constitution that clearly defines our allowed actions and demonstrates that we are a not-for-profit society. It's really unfortunate, and whether it's intentional or not, it manifests actually as a weapon, because if you keep us out of the system and then use the fact that we're operating outside the system as a way to then come after us for legal consequences, it's a little bit of a dishonest approach, and I think that needs to be touched upon maybe a little bit more as well, is some of the double standards that exist, and that are kind of part of the landscape, the dynamic, the development of the MMPR system, which now been struck down, but now the new regulations and statutes that are being developed in this new.
Yeah, it's a gong show for sure, but we're moving forward ever, backwards never here in Canada. Sometimes the forward ever part is really slow, but we're moving forward as fast as we can. There's some wonderful people that have gotten on the side of the argument. I spoke with Dr. David Hepburn earlier, who's a really great, well-rounded guy who's doing all that he can to engage and educate doctors. It's almost as though we need these individuals to educate these individuals. It's almost as though we will need a banker to educate the bankers. We will need a doctor to educate the doctors. And the police need to educate the police. It's like that because they are such strong groups of belief that they very rarely allow the outside source to come in. You know, certain people will. I guarantee David Hepburn has. He's allowed to be a foot in the industry to absorb the education, but his other foot is in the medical practice, and he's able to educate doctors, which I think is going to be a very important factor in all of this. We need to educate these people. Doctors need to stop being afraid to lose their licenses to prescribe cannabis, and banks need to stop worrying about getting in federal trouble for accepting cash that comes from cannabis sales. I mean, the bottom line is we know that the majority of the bank's money has already been laundered. It's all sorts of illicit money that goes through banks.
There was a very good case regarding HSBC a couple years ago where they were essentially caught red-handed setting up in their branches in Mexico drop-off points for cartel cash, and the same thing was happening all around the world, in Russia and the United States as well. And anybody can go and look this up online. This is not a secret. The solution was not of the authorities was not to charge the directors of the holding company with crimes, even though it's clear that this could not have been orchestrated without their knowledge. It was simply to fine them $2 billion in the United States alone and around the world. And these are the kinds of double standards that we can make our other bankers know that we know, and that this is not an acceptable way to operate. We are people who do no harm, and that is the main standard. Do no harm.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's getting to that push here. You know, I'm starting to feel a little bit like Todd when he gets antsy and goes off on one of his awesome rants. It's enough is enough. This is absolutely ludicrous that we are not allowed to be involved in banks, to be involved to pay our taxes, to do all of these things that we need to be a part of for this industry to move forward. And it seems like, well, it doesn't seem like they are completely doing it on purpose. They're keeping us from that ability, and I know Etienne feels the pain for sure, because running Berkeley Patients Group and running the amount of money they run through there and not being able to use a bank, I can't even imagine what you're going through, bro. Like, it's putting you in, it puts you in danger. Not being allowed to put money in the bank puts you in danger.
But it's huge. You saw somebody murdered in Colorado, this actual veteran who just wanted a job. He actually wanted to be a police officer, and he was shot in the face there outside of a dispensary there in Colorado, you know, where it's legal, because the reality is people look at it like it's a cash business because it's treated like a cash business. They've ostracized us completely to the point where, you know, I think I said even in Hash Church, I hope this doesn't come to the point where it's going to cost people their lives, but it already has cost people their lives. And it's shameful that we continue to ignore this situation. And that's, again, why I'm proud to be part of the National Cannabis Industries Association, because we're actually lobbying and trying to change that currently in the United States every way that we can. And so it's lobbying up on the Hill and, you know, in Washington, D.C., and having lobbyists up there that are trying to change the issues and get different insertions into bills so that we can carry this forward, so that just in the legal states we want to be able to do it, you know, and we can't. And it's only putting us further in danger because we have to take this money down to them. We have to pay it in cash. We all have to have, you know, money counting machines. You know, we would all love to have the simple luxury of having banks that we could deposit in to pay all of our bills and pay all of our taxes. We have to do that all manually, and it's beyond frustration, you know. But this is the lot where we are, and when we're blazed trails, there's no trail in front of us. So we just have to keep moving forward regardless, and that's why we actively say, you know, you still have to be involved because there's things that are going on that you have to, your voice is active. Every person in the United States, for every person that writes or calls in, represents close to 1,000 people or more, depending on where you are in your district. And people ignore that so completely about reaching out to their local congressperson or their representative. It's all lip service to them. They just hear it in one ear and it goes out the other. But if they actually started to call and put pressure on these people, we would see look what you're doing in Canada. You're actually actively up there taking educated people and going out there and getting involved. You're not sitting on your laurels and waiting for Health Canada to actually do something about it. And so here in the United States, we're too apathetic. We're just sitting here waiting around, and we're just going to sit and complain about it because we're too afraid to pick up a phone or go visit our representative to do anything about it. And it's fucking shameful and annoying, you know, because we'll be here again next year if we don't get up and actively do something, and we'll be here next year saying the same thing that we said last year. Boy, wouldn't it be great to have a bank? So people, how many people are watching us currently? Almost 746 people. So if you're Canadian or American, you know you can reach out to your local jurisdiction and get involved and get active and let your voice be heard, because it represents not just yourself, it represents unheard patients who can't see for you. It can't hear for you. It can't represent you. But your voice can represent them just by reaching out. It's a simple act.
It's almost as though we are at the point where it's important for people, and I'll use the term, to come out of the closet. People that are still hiding their cannabis use, that are respected people in society, those are the people that need to let people know. Those are the people that, you know, don't be afraid to talk about it. Don't be afraid to share the education, whether it's from your son or your daughter or your nephew or your brother or your father or whatever it is. I want people to be able to stop being afraid to talk about this and get excited about talking about it. It's exciting to tell someone that you can help them with an ailment. It's exciting to tell them about a preventative medicine that can prevent disease and old age. And it's really exciting to tell people about a plant that, when inhaled, creates such a wonderful and beautiful euphoria that it just has to be a good thing.
I'm not as optimistic, in all honesty. I think, you know, when I got into this 22 years ago, they couldn't sell high times in Canada, and now you're complaining about not being able to move your pot money through banks, and I think it's an incredible advance. And when you look at it in perspective, this isn't a short story. This is a long struggle, and we're all part of it, and we can't just rest on our laurels. There are institutionalized bigotry that's happening and working against us, and, you know, bureaucracies that have long established themselves as making money against this culture. And there are a lot of very legal lobby dollars. I mean, I love you 18 and you're telling people to call is very, it's a good thing. But the truth is we're up against people with briefcases full of money that have law degrees that are sent by corporations that have a vested interest in keeping cannabis illegal. And it breaks my heart. I mean, right now in California, we're dealing with people that are now marijuana growers, marijuana doctors, marijuana pot clubs that are all aligning themselves with prison guards and the prosecutors and coming out against legalization because they say, and I think it's insincere, that it doesn't do enough for them, when in reality what they're really worried about is the start of this conversation, is legal producers getting in the way of people like us who have pioneered an industry and had to be outlaws in order to be free, to usher this culture into acceptance. And we're not going to have an accepted culture unless we keep working at it. This whole medical cannabis thing, as a kid who had cancer 10 times, obviously I'm greatly for it, but I'm an adult now, and we should all have the right to grow up and not have to drink whiskey or not have to smoke a cigarette, and we should fight for equal rights because we know what they are. And this is something we all have to realize isn't going to happen in just, the turn of a politician or the change of a law. This is going to be something we all have to work towards changing, because realistically, this has built up over decades. This institutionalized or bureaucratic bigotry has built up for decades, and we all have to work to educate our neighbors, educate our bankers, educate our friends as to why they're wrong in perpetuating it.
And most importantly on that, Todd, is I would add this, that when you're educating about cannabis and you want to get everyone learning about it, and you're excited to get people involved, I think it does us a disservice once the straight folks, the people who have not, they've maybe been more listening to the propaganda, they don't really know about cannabis, once they have an excitement for it, once they want to be involved, for God's sakes, please embrace them. Do not say, why is that guy he hasn't been involved in cannabis for 40 years like I have, he shouldn't be allowed to be a part of it. That is bullshit. The entire reason that we're fighting for this, for mainstream to become a part of this, is that so everyone can be a part of this and share and educate. And it's not preaching to the choir that we're going to get that done. It's preaching to the mainstream society. And I've seen it happen already where people are getting... Go ahead, Todd.
Well, is it not an example of our work that people are changing their minds and their positions about cannabis? These minds are being changed, Mark, because of books like The Emperor Wears No Clothes or films like The Union, and people being able to do research and learning the truth and the history, resonating with them, and them cross-referencing and realizing we're not making up fairy tales. This is not some long, foolish story. These are historical facts. Cannabis played an important role in the cultural evolution of humanity and continues to do so, and now through science we're learning that the medicine plays a crucial role in the human development, and the endocannabinoid system is a crucial part of our everyday being.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I think it goes even further. I think the healing potential of this plant, it's something that brings people together on the human level. It doesn't matter what your education is. It doesn't matter what your income level is. It doesn't matter what your position is in society. This is a plant that, even if it's happening behind closed doors, brings people together on the human level. And that is something that humanity needs overall, and that Mother Earth needs from humanity in order to move forward. And I think that's something that needs not to be overlooked. I think that the cannabis has that role to play and is starting to play that role. And so many people that are in the industry now are such an important part of playing that role going forward. And I think Mark makes a good point as well, that reaching out to the general public that perhaps doesn't know a lot about cannabis, doesn't have a lot of experience with cannabis, is very important, because for a number of reasons. On the practical level, because statutes and regulations are being developed right now, being developed here in Canada, being developed all over the United States. And there are a lot of stories being put out, a lot of excuses being put out by regulators and lawmakers that they need restrictive, prohibitive, even punitive regulations and statutes in order to protect the public, in order to keep organized crime out of the legalized industry. And there's a lot of data out there that simply explodes all the myths, like that cannabis causes schizophrenia, that cannabis harms the brain development of children, that cannabis is addictive, all these things out there, that are still put out there in major media outlets that are spoken on television and radio by our political leaders, people from the medical profession, and we're in a position to be able to collect data and try and change people's minds. Let them know, not try and force them, not try and get angry and huff and puff, but simply show them and explain to them this is not the reality. The reality is something different. And whatever we do going forward in regulation and statute and as a community in general needs to be based on reality because it's what's real.
It's always good to engage with reality. I will give it up to Health Canada for one thing, and I couldn't believe this. Maybe you saw this, Joel. I went on the website, and they actually announced that cannabis is not a gateway drug on the Health Canada website. They had like a whole page thing, and I was reading it like, this is very unlike Health Canada. Health Canada, who is in charge of our medical marijuana program here in Canada, has stated on their website that they believe there is no medical benefit to cannabis. This is the branch of government that is currently running our cannabis program, if you can imagine. But on a side note, they have recently announced at least slowly dissipating a stereotype, because it's unfortunate, but the majority of people, when they read it there, they'll just believe it. If they read it in their newspaper, they'll just believe it. If they've got their son who's telling them, no, this is a real thing, they're like, well, I'll wait till I see it in the newspaper. Go ahead, Todd.
Let me say this. Right now, this weekend, I'm at an event in Southern California called Chalice. We had Dougie on a couple weeks ago talking about it, and he did a really fantastic job of bringing the community, a very conservative an inland community. This is not a liberal LA city. This is not the Bay Area. This is no Santa Cruz. This is a very Republican, inland, conservative San Bernardino, Victorville area. And the police were walking through this event on Friday and Saturday, interacting with glass blowers, inquiring with oil makers, and really taking this to a new level, if you will, because they're seeing it and they're asking sincere questions. I had one guy tell me that he was moving some edibles, and what happened was he saw a police officer came, and he was nervous that the cop was going to basically give him a hard time, and the cop asked him, are those medical edibles? And he said yes. And he said, are you giving them away as samples? And the guy said yes, thinking he might get in trouble, but he wanted to be honest. And he said, is it okay if I ask you for some? My father has cancer. And the guy was blown away. Yeah, absolutely. And he gave some to the cop. And he goes, it was such a shift for me to have them actually ask me for their help rather than give me a hard time. And, events like where we're at Chalice are the catalysts for social change, because these police officers and city officials and the hotels that are selling out around the event are really feeling of what a cannabis culture is like when it comes to town. And it's not like a bear fest. We're not leaving a mess. There's not a ton of fights. There's no brawls in the middle of the city fair. It's just a really beautiful, peaceful event of people coming together and enjoying the company of one another. And when the cops see that and feel that, they will forever have a different opinion on us as a whole culture.
Well put, Todd.
You can see this picture, Bubble Man. You can see this picture. It's an actual San Bernardino County police officer blowing glass at Chalice.
Yes, that is awesome. I saw some of those pictures up on Facebook, and I was like, right on. I just wanted to thank Joel for coming in. He's got to go back to his booth right now, but
thanks, Joel.
Thanks for sharing your comments, man.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I really appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the presence of all the other guests here as well. Everybody just keep up the good work. And tell your local politicians, go to papcannabis.ca, and let's make this happen.
All right, well, I have Chris Bennett on standby. He's going to come up here and join us for a little bit of Hash Church, talk a little bit about what he did, what he spoke about yesterday, and talk a little bit about his latest book, all of his cannabis historium information.
Chris, awesome.
Wonderful event here in Vancouver, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's been kind of fun. You had a panel or a talk that you did yesterday?
Yeah, cannabis spirituality, religion, that type of stuff,
Absolutely, the stuff I've been listening to you talk about for 20 years. And I have to say, interestingly enough with Chris, I've been watching him talk about this literally for 20 years. And one of the very unique things, and this is definitely a props to you, is that he always learns more, and it's always ever changing, and it's really cool in the sense that you're not just saying the same thing over and over again. The breadth of history that you're learning seems to, it's just getting deeper and deeper.
You know, well, the thing is there's always these new discoveries. Every few years it seems we get some new great archaeological discovery, and it's great to see. You know, just last week, a couple days before the conference there was this Botanical Academic Journal had an article by archaeologists, geographers and stuff, talking about humanity's 10,000-year-odd relationship with this plant, showing that both in China and in Europe, independently, 10,000 years ago, they were starting to grow hemp for fiber, food, medicine, that type of stuff. And, you know, it's basically what I've been, saying for quite a while now. And then there was this massive 5,000-year spread of it, they say, and it led to headlines in, like, New Scientist that the founders of Western civilization were dope dealers, and in Men's Journal, marijuana, the first cash crop, you know. But those sensational as those headlines are, it's true, man, you know. The whole Indo-European culture that spread out into Western Europe, even up into China with the Gushi culture, into India and Persia, and
It's this mic too.
Yeah, into India, Persia, all this stuff was taking place. You know, 5,000 years ago, cannabis was a huge part of it. They were going around and trading in cannabis, and that's why we have this common root word for canna in Sanskrit and French, German, Dutch, and English, and all these different languages, is because they're all offshoots of the same Indo-European culture that spread the use of this plant throughout the ancient world. And it is the roots of our economy. The Silk Road was more of a hempen highway than a Silk Road.
Just got this weird thing showing up on the screen, and I can't get rid of it. It's bugging the hell out of me. I don't know if anyone else can see the draw stamp text thing on our video. Do you guys see that in the room right now? Okay, great. So keep going, Chris.
Yeah, that's good. So yeah, it's great to see the academics catching up with the potheads once again. You know what I mean? It's the potheads that led the way in things like growing hydroponically. It's potheads that led the way in the medicinal reunification of humanity's relationship with cannabis. And, you know, it's the potheads that are leading the way even in the areas of history and culture and the study of that and cannabis's relationship with it.
Yeah, I saw that article. It was pretty incredible. So what's going on with the latest book?
The latest book is called Liber 420, Cannabis Arcanum. That just means book 420. Arcanum can mean hidden or occult, or it can even mean an elixir of some kind. And it's a real study of something I wrote about in my first book, Green Gold, which came out in 1995, about the relationship of cannabis with things like alchemy and ceremonial magic. And there's a huge relationship there, even more than I'd realized when I started out on this project. And it's fascinating, you know, like even the founder of, alchemy, European alchemy, Zosimus, the Greek philosopher and Gnostic in the 4th century, was writing about cannabis infusions. So it's like, it's pretty fascinating stuff. Figures like Rabelais, a 15th century monk and bachelor of medicine, alchemist. He encoded references to cannabis under the herb Pantagruelian to avoid the persecution of the church. These guys had to be kind of careful about how they approached this thing. There was, you know, even the smallest eating bacon on Lent would have got you burnt in the flames in those days.
So how far back does Prohibition go with cannabis? How far back? Because I'm thinking, you know, when they find the guy in the tomb and he's got the Scythian bowl or whatever, I'm wondering if that guy had to hide that when he was traveling.
Well, you know, probably not at that time, but we know, you know, and he's like part of this same Indo-European culture that the Soma cult came out of, and there were major prohibitions around both Heoma and Soma, you know, a few centuries BC. And this is probably related to cannabis and suppressed it a little bit. And in if you take a look at these cannabis references and canna references in the Old Testament, there was definitely points where it was really celebrated and appreciated, and other times where it was really seen with disdain, you know what I mean? A lot of times it has to do with moving away from shamanic culture into more religions of control, where it's all about rules and how you control the society, how much money they're supposed to give, you know. And
I just wonder who the real Henry Anslinger is. Who was the real first narc?
Yeah,
who decided this?
Yeah. You know, one of the things, like, I always thought the Roman Catholic Church was really solidly against it. I see in lots of books, and I've even quoted it, this alleged 1484 papal bull against cannabis, which described it as a sort of devil's sacrament. But that actually doesn't even exist if you go back to the Latin text. It doesn't mention cannabis at all. It kind of mentions a broader reference to witches' drugs, which may include cannabis, but there's not a specific reference to it. In fact, there's a 12th century pope who had a recipe for cannabis-infused wine and prescribed it for a number of medical uses. Although, you know, like, things are always changing. You know, like the Catholic Church, I think its relationship with cannabis really changed from pope to pope. So, you know,
it just seems like a natural thing that they would be like, well, we should probably avoid letting the people have access to this.
You know, I think everywhere they went, anywhere that people were using entheogenic substances, whether it be in South America and Mexico with things like peyote and ayahuasca, and Ridia corymbosa seeds and morning glory and those types of things, they naturally associated that with witchcraft, and they definitely burnt a lot of witches at the stake and other heretics at the stake for using psychoactive substances. And same thing in Africa, and it's still happening today. There's a natural, inherent fear of these types of substances and people accessing altered states of consciousness with them, which is kind of ironic when you take a look at these references to cannabis in the Old Testament, because really I think the real impact of those, which is yet to be felt, is that what it reveals is the plant-based shamanic origins of even the biblical and Abrahamic traditions, you know, along with the Vedas and the Avesta and these other ancient traditions. And that's something that these cultures have always fought against every time that they've come in contact with it and try to persecute it to non-existence.
Well, I'll tell you one thing about cannabis when you bring in the entheogenesis of all these plants, because it was you know, cannabis wasn't separate from all of these plants when you go back in history, the way we have separated and divided it today. For me, I never call cannabis a gateway drug, but I certainly will call cannabis an absolute inspirer for me to take psychedelics. From LSD to mescaline to peyote to psilocybin mushrooms of all varieties. It really opened my mind, and I felt like after some of my most intense psychedelic journeys, I would often have people ask me what university I went to, where did I go to school, and I would say I went to the school of Terence McKenna's 5 grams of dried mushrooms in the dark room. That's where I went to school. And it really helped me articulate my message. It's, you know, Terence always called it the logos, that sort of language energy, and the guy definitely had the gift of gab. Definitely one of my big inspirers, but yeah, I just wanted to sort of...
I see Sam put up there, too, on the screen a minute ago, Franz Rosenthal's The Herd, Hashish versus Medieval Muslim Society. And fantastic book, pretty rare. You know, I think you probably pay about 600 American for a copy of that right now. But you can actually get the whole book on Google Books online and check it out. And it's a wonderful collection of medieval poetry, both for and against hashish. And Islam's a classic example. You know, the Islamic world went through periods of harsh prohibitions where they pull your teeth out for using cannabis, as well as times where it was totally celebrated. It's not specifically prohibited in the Quran like alcohol. So there's this kind of gray area where some people interpreted that it's allowed and others say, no, it's an intoxicant. It's not allowed. But some of the poetry, that medieval poetry in the Islamic world is just beautiful. Here's a saying from 11th century Sheikh Haydar, a Sufi guy, founder of a Kuala order. God has granted you the privilege of knowing the secret of these leaves. Thus, when you eat of it, your dense worries disappear and your exalted minds become polished. You know what I mean? It's like cannabis kind of suppresses all those little nagging wants and desires and unhappy thoughts, and kind of helps you to kind of get more down to that essence. And that's what the Sufis and Dervishes really use it for. Get down to that common essence that animates us all, the God spark, you know?
Absolutely. I'm just going to plug the computer in so we don't die.
There you go, man. And, you know, a similar saying from like 2,500 years ago in China, a Taoist poem, first a yin, then a yang. No one knows what I do. jade buds of holy hemp for the one that lives apart. And that's kind of like life has its ups and downs, you know. But with that cannabis, you're in that kind of steady middle road of centeredness, you know. I kind of like.
Dude, I just like listening to you say those quotes. Those are beautifully
well, you know,
well-written poems.
You know, one of the things about when you really begin to learn the history of this plant and the amazing, magical, religious, spiritual history of it is when you take on that information, the plant itself is cloaked back in that romantic magic, and it becomes this magical thing once again, you know what I mean? And that door is wide open again.
Absolutely. It was magic for me from the first joint I ever smoked at 14 years old. Man, I'll tell you, it's just, I've said it once and I'll say it again, it was right out of the movie Half-Baked, where they all go into the candy store and he's hugging the big Abba Zaba bar. I've had a great relationship with cannabis since the beginning, and it's been a long 25-year road. I still can't believe the more I learn about cannabis, the less I know.
Absolutely. You know, the whole, like, spiritualist movement, table rapping, seances, all that type of stuff, directly grew out of cannabis users. People like Louis Alpha, Hans Kahagné, who were founders of the spiritualism. Helena Blavatsky, who went on to become the founder of Theosophy. All this stuff grew out of cannabis. It was when people in Europe kind of got reintroduced to cannabis in the 19th century, when there was this big influx after Napoleon went to the Mideast, and all this hash started kind of pouring in. It like totally created like a virtual, like the New Age movement today, you know what I mean? It all has its roots in that, and it totally revitalized this kind of like dead in the water religious thought. It was just the Bible, you believe in the Bible, you go to church, you don't have religious experiences. And then all of a sudden people started, you know, ingesting cannabis and opium and things like that, and started accessing these altered states of consciousness. And it totally fueled both the occult revival and the 19th century spiritualist movement. And I've been researching this book. I've been going over literally hundreds of these newspapers and journals from the 19th century that were very popular, magical, philosophical journals. And the glowing stories about cannabis in there, the praises and the advertisements praising it. It's so odd to see, you know, compared to what happened afterwards with the drug war, the prejudice. And these people weren't bagged down with the sort of prejudices and paranoia that the drug war is kind of laid on this plant, and some people are still taking it.
Well, let's pray we don't have a revamping of the drug war. I had a really horrible thought the other day that if Hilary got elected as president, I wondered if she would potentially pull another Nancy Reagan, or if she's actually going to just leave cannabis alone.
Yeah.
It was a frightening thought.
Well, Trump, you know, he's talking about Chris Christie as his vice president for Newt Gingrich, and both of these guys are insane in their thoughts on cannabis. Newt Gingrich wanted to bring the death penalty for anybody bringing in more than an ounce of cannabis into the United States at one time, and Chris Christie is well known for you know, canning bills that have gone through other, we're almost going to be passed, and vetoing it, and other things like that. I'm sure clearly anti-marijuana as well. So I don't think there's hope for either of these people in regards to cannabis, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least the Democratic Party is kind of taking a stance itself, you know what I mean? Regardless of what Hillary is, but the Democratic Party seems to be kind of speaking out more towards let the states decide and that type of thing.
Absolutely. Well, Sam's held up another book really quickly, but I missed it.
I missed that. What was it?
He's probably got like 85,000. Oh, it wasn't a book?
Oh, yeah, no, some ancient medicine, you know. Grimwald, so wonderful. The asthma cigarette that was around in the 19th century. Grimwald.
Paris, France.
Yeah. This was like a cigarette that was actually used, a cannabis cigarette that was actually used for treating asthma. And you know what? That's another amazing thing. When I was putting together the museum collection here, that Donnie Wirtschafter recently bought off David Melmo Levine, who bought it off of me. And what Sam has done as well with collecting these bottles, you know, you hear about cannabis medicine, but when you see the literally scores of different types of bottles out there for everything from uterine problems to asthma, cough medicines, antipsychotic type stuff, and corn plasters. That was probably 90% of the corn plasters prior to Prohibition were used for, contained cannabis indica. And it worked probably the same way for corns and bunions as the way that it does for tumors, by stopping the blood flow and the feeding of the corn or bunion.
Have you been to Ben's museum in Barcelona?
Not the one in Barcelona.
Okay, because I suggest right here and now that we get Ben to fly you out there and talk, because you could literally give a history lesson on everything that is in his museum. You could probably record it so that when people come there, I know he already has it set up with headphones and stuff, but man, the knowledge that you have in regards to the historical context of cannabis as a medicine and all these different, you know, all of the history of it is pretty incredible, and it's too bad that Todd jumped off right before I said that, because he could facilitate that. But you should 100% get in touch with Ben in a way that we can facilitate getting you involved some way to do that, because I've been to the museum, and the only way that museum would have been better is if you were there explaining everything, because the museum is so profound. It's unfucking believable. You can't believe the shit. Well, you know all of it.
Yeah,
you know everything that he has.
You know, there's been a lot of great documentaries on cannabis in recent years, but there's nothing that has really delved into this fascinating ancient history, religious history, what's still going on in India, and that's what really a really incredible cannabis history, because when you start to understand, you know, plants are a natural right, and talking about a plant like cannabis, we're talking about a plant that, you know, yesterday the first speaker at the conference, he showed evidence of fibers, the fossilized fibers, 8,000 years ago. You know what I mean? It's like so entrenched, you know, and we've got to think about our relationship with this plant. As we were nomadic people traveling on this plant, growing in our human waste night soil, which is literally our human waste, you know what I mean? And ingesting us, and then we're ingesting that plant. And it's like this amazing biological loop between us and this plant, and that means for the incredible relationship between the cannabinoids of cannabis and the endocannabinoid system of the human body. Co-relationship of us evolving together.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to be helping get in touch with Todd and Ben and try to facilitate that, because I just pictured this incredible event that it could occur. You know, we could have people come to see it, and I know a lot of people would travel to see that, maybe right before Cannabis or something. And then, you know, also the recording of all of it and being able to use your historical knowledge in conjunction with each. He's got so many of those bottles, like hundreds.
Chris, one thing I can tell you, Chris, is that the museum in Spain is easily 4 or 5 times the volume of the one in Amsterdam. It's funny, too, because the one in Amsterdam gets more walk-in traffic than the one in Spain. And the one in Spain is a work of art.
It is. Yeah. Wouldn't you love to see Chris explain the historical context of a lot of this stuff, Sam? Don't you think that would be
I disagree that he'll be able to understand everything there, because let me tell you, I've been doing this longer than anybody, and they've got stuff that I've never seen before, and I couldn't. I know what it's for, and I know how it functions, but I've never seen it before.
Right. Well, hey, even if it was half of it, it would be incredible. I mean, the museum is truly a work of art.
And it covers all issues, every issue of cannabis, all of them.
How did that happen? Sorry about that, guys. A little bit of technical difficulty there. Accidentally putting some music on. I wanted to welcome Tony into the room. He hasn't. I know he's off to Chalice today. He was going to be here from 9 to 10, but he hung out later, so he's got a few things that he wants to share with us. I definitely want to thank Chris Bennett for coming on and just dropping knowledge as always, dude. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Chris. I hope we can see you again one of these Sundays soon.
Absolutely, brother. Yeah, you know, and I just want to say one thing. I first became a cannabis activist here in British Columbia 26 years ago. And there was like, I couldn't find, the only other person that I could find that was even doing anything remotely like cannabis activism was Paul DeFelice out in Nelson.
Yeah.
It has just come so far and gotten so big and become so mainstream. It's just such a pleasure to see just how incredible this this meme of cannabis and the revitalization, you know. And with this plant, we can heal our planet, we can save our forests, we can get away from fossil fuels, we can feed the world with the most nutritious seed in the world, we can clothe ourselves without the soil-depleting cotton where all the pesticides and chemicals are used. And I think that what it really offers, too, is a revitalization of our spiritual world, that this agent knowledge is a window of opportunity, a door is opening back to this agent sacred tree of life, the Soma Heoma. It's literally a holy grail, this plant.
Right on, brother. Thanks so much, dude. Cheers, brother. Cannabis warrior, Chris Bennett right there. Thank you so much for coming on, Chris. Tony, did you want to get into a few of the things that you were going to share today here?
Yeah, man. Thanks for the intro. I had posted on my page regarding CBN. So we had once upon a time talked about this. We kind of barely went over it. It seemed to be a mystery for a lot of people. So I am uploading in the Hash Church group a couple things right now for you guys to look at. So let's see if we can get this up.
Yeah, dude.
Okay.
Stoked to see it.
What's up?
I said I'm stoked to see it.
And Tony,
Yeah, there was.
have you
Go
ever
ahead.
smoked pure CBN?
Yeah, I have. I have been working with CBN for a couple years now, and this is how you get to CBN. So I'm going to show you guys.
This is how you get
I really wish in this pure CBN, you know, it can be, you know, it's 90% less psychoactive than THC, but I can definitely tell you, like, pure CBN may not be for everybody. CBN could, you know, I would say in a small percentage of patients that are out there, they might experience they might experience different things. They might if you just smoked pure CBN or had CBN, obviously it's a sedative, it's a muscle relaxer, things like this. But you might have like sweats, or you might have like different types of psychosis or different types of experiences with it. So there's not a lot of information that's out there. I personally pair it with CBD. I don't serve CBN on its own. So I don't like CBN on its own. I like it paired with CBD. I think it has a lot.
I was really speaking recreationally, of course.
Yeah, I've smoked it. I've smoked it. It's generally if you've ever seen it in it's generally it's a degraded process, you know. So a lot of people are, I don't know, they just have theories of like how they can go from THCA to CBN. But I'm putting up in Hash Church the starting material of where like some farmer grade keef basically started at, and then what temperature and oxygen and a little bit of UV can do to that same starting material.
And
so
what was the best conversion rate you got, Tony?
Well, the test that I was hoping SE would have done for today, they had it early in the week, maybe like Wednesday or Thursday. I'm looking online right now because I do a two-stage process, and the first stage is to get it to where it's almost fully converted, and then I just because I don't want to go past a certain point, because then you just start breaking down the CBN. So what I try to do is get it to where there's like, you know, conversion where it's right now I'm going to show you 73 milligrams of CBN to like 15 of THC when it started at 300 milligrams of THC. So that gives you
25% conversion.
Yeah, you lose. So if we started with 300 milligrams, then I'm going to end up with 80 milligrams of CBN. So that goes from we lose, yeah, almost 70%, something like that.
Do you do it under an inert gas?
No, I don't. I definitely use inert gas though in the process, but not.
What method were you using? I'm sitting here with one of the owners of the Whistler Medical LP. Well, one of the people involved in Whistler LP up in Whistler, and he just missed the first part. So what was the actual conversion? How were you doing it?
Okay, so I just basically, you know, the tumblers that you sell, the keef tumblers. Okay, so you know, you got to keep that cold. So you could either build a freezer that it sits in, or you could use like a liquid nitrogen, or however you want to do it. But the colder the better, the drier the material the better. Obviously, if you're curing out your buds or your smalls or trim or whatever, just getting it as dry as possible, cold as possible in that tumbler. You know, you could build a freezer very easily and just drill a little hole in it, and you know, you can have
using coldness to extract keef, but what was the conversion method that you took?
Yeah, just heat. Just heat. Heat and time.
Have you tried using UV?
I have tried to use UV, and you know, I don't see it on a massive level working that great right now, because the chamber that I built was small, high intensity, 500 watt UV. Still working with that, but I think there's definitely something in taking like a SIF that's 30%. I mean, I just go with what I know works. So obviously in the background, I'm working on a lot of other things to try to make the conversion better, but I can tell you that I've been converting 300 milligrams of THC from farmer's grade keef to about 80 milligrams of CBN. That's like been the standard. So if I can get better than that, great. But when people were asking about what is the
you always do, dude.
Yeah, but that's still pretty good. I mean, it's not, you know, it's how I make CBN. So, you know, that's why it costs a lot of money too. When people are like, oh, I don't understand it. Well, that's going from farmer's grade keef. If we went from like flowers, you only get 120 milligrams, right, per gram, or 150 milligrams or 200 milligrams per gram, depending on the potency that you're starting with. But if you're losing that much, you know, at 75%, you have 150 milligrams per bud, you know, you lose that conversion, you're only getting like 30, I don't know, 35, 38 grams. And the volume lost as well, if you wanted to know that, that's important. You know, it's going from 370 grams, say, 400 grams, to, I think this example I did 370 grams, and there was like 320 left. So out of 370 grams of starting material, times, I don't know, it's a 15% loss in volume, as well as a 75% conversion, loss in conversion.
Well, it definitely sounds a lot quicker than the Breeder Steve method, which was, forget about 12 grams, or sorry, 112 grams of moonshine bubble hash in his garage. Then bring it to me years later, like almost a dozen years later, and give it to the West Coast Concentrate guys, and they pressed it into rosin, and it was the purple red rosin on my Instagram. It was, people were tripping out on it, actually. They haven't tested it yet, but it has got to be like, you take a puff of it and then you just go to sleep.
Yeah, it's sleep. I use it in my P4 for that. I'm going to post on the Hash Church group. The starting keef was roughly 30% THCA, or 300 per gram with haze.
Hey, welcome Mark Scaldone to the room, our hash panelist chemist. The minute Tony starts talking about conversion rates, Mark pops in.
Oh, of course.
Hey, what's going on? Conversion rates? I know about that.
Well, so what's it converting to if it's not converting to CBN?
Yeah, what's the rest converting to? That's a unique. That's the question to ask. You know.
Oh, I also did terpenes on these too, so you can see the terpenes going in and out. It's hold on a second, because I knew that was going to be the next question.
Excellent.
Well, remember that you need oxygen from air to convert THC to CBN. So, and typically, what you're doing this at a temperature that's elevated and beyond the boiling point of air, or beyond the boiling point of water. So, if you see white smoke coming out, that's typically the water vapor from the reaction of the oxygen in air and the hydrogens that are on the methyl cyclohexene ring that are basically being removed in that oxidation process.
Well, thanks for the heads up, Mark.
I don't have any smoke on mine, and I turn mine into what I call a CBN cocoa. So it's like a hollow like almost like chunks of like cocoa, like kind of aerated. It's like foam, but like red kind of color.
So you're not limiting the transfer of air into the reactor, right?
No. This heating chamber has a built-in in and out for oxygen or for whatever gas that you wanted to use to help speed that up.
Yeah, well, it needs air to convert THC to CBN. You need oxygen and air for that to happen.
Yeah, this has an in and out of oxygen.
Hey, while Tony's checking things out and looking there, I wanted to introduce Daniel, who's next to me here. He grew up in North Van, and he currently works for Whistler Medical Marijuana Corp. And he's making the cannabis oils, and he's doing quality assurance. So, yeah, he's also a good friend of mine's cousin up in Whistler, who I do a lot of backcountry snowmobiling with. So we sort of got introduced through through Ryan Nadeau. And he's just sitting here with me as well, listening, and he was willing to share maybe a little bit about what Whistler Medical is doing. Whistler Medical is a licensed producer here in Canada, so it's one of the federally exempt licensed producers. So yeah, while you're looking, maybe I'll get Daniel to tell us a little bit about what's been going on up in Whistler for the last couple of years now.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so Whistler is Canada's first and only certified organic licensed producer. So that's part of the Whistler lifestyle. We recycle things from the ecosystem. So you're getting stuff that is part of Whistler. Restaurant scraps of the vegetables, and then from farms from Pemberton, and all these products go into making our cannabis, and that's what we're really passionate about. Repping that West Coast ecosystem, and that's what's going into our cannabis. And we're really passionate about the organic process. It's gonna, I think it makes an amazing product, and it's really about the sustainability, helping improve our communities, and making great medicine.
Yeah, it often shocked me that more LPs weren't involved in at least having an organic line. I saw right away Wood Thrush. His eyebrows went up when you mentioned organic, and he went like this. And I'm guessing that PTSD is the sort of sensitive, I don't know too much about it, but it would seem like the kind of thing like that you would want to keep all chemicals away from your body, because obviously, you're working with the chemistry of your brain. Maybe having, non-organic chemicals in the cannabis is going to affect the medicine. Is that something that happens with Thrush? Do you choose to look for organic medicine for your PTSD?
I choose organics for everything. I was raised, my parents had a garden, we had a compost pile, so ever since I was a kid, that's just how life was. So yeah, I grow organic, and it's really difficult for me because I go into the grocery store and it's like, okay, does this stuff have salt in it or not? And they're like, well, it's organic. So that's definitely kudos to you for going organic.
Cool, yeah, I mean, I look at it as the normal, everyday thing as well, but it didn't surprise me when I saw that Whistler was going to go for the organic aspect, and I definitely salute you guys for doing that. Can you tell us a little bit about the extraction processes that you guys are currently involved in?
Of course. So we make bubble hash first off from fresh frozen material. So we make oils, and my vision for the oils was terps, to retain all the terps we can. I think it's really important for making a full spectrum product. And one thing we see about organic, I think, is that you see maybe a bit more balancing of the medical components. I think with certain grow systems, you can push everything into THC and get a really high THC number, but we're seeing with the organic, the THC is a bit lower, but the terpenes are going up. So we really wanted to capture that in the oil. So we use fresh frozen product. We run it through bubble bags, and then take that resin, and without drying it, we put it straight into oil and then dry the oil later. And this allows us, and we decarboxylate in a way to retain all the terpenes. So some is lost, you know, you can't keep everything. Once it hits the water, you're losing terpenes in the cooking process, but we end up with a product that has the same ratio of terpenes to cannabinoids as you see in dried marijuana. So that's really important to us, and because we use the bubble hash to go straight into the oil, there's no plant matter. Even if you're blasting good material with CO2, you're taking waxes and lipids out of the plant cells themselves and not the trichromes. So here we're just taking trichromes, take bubble hash, which maybe is 70% THC or cannabinoids, and we infuse that into the oil, and then we filter out all the solid parts that are left over, which is a good 25% of the weight of the bubble hash. So you're only getting, you know, 5% impurities and 95% cannabinoids and terpenes coming into the oil. And we use organic, you know, cold-pressed coconut and olive oils, and it's just the same philosophy I have for cooking and anything. You take good quality starting ingredients, and with not much processing, you make an amazing final product. So that's a simple process, and we're getting amazing oils. You know, there's not much chlorophyll at all in there, and great terpenes.
And obviously, you guys are limited by Health Canada. They're not allowing you to do everything right now. You guys obviously have an interest to produce raw product extracts and to produce probably a variety of products. I'm guessing. Is that something you guys are?
Oh, of course. There's obviously a big demand for extracts, and sticking with our organic, you know, vision. We don't want to use any solvents that are bad for the environment or harmful to patients. So we stick, you know, where we want to do bubble hash, dry sift, rosin, all these great extracts that help patients. It's really silly. Health Canada comes at it that THC and cannabinoids are dangerous. So we're going to do everything we can to limit them, not thinking about, you know, we don't mandate adulteration of other medicines and limit, you know, if you're getting a pill of Tylenol, Health Canada is not saying, oh, you can't put that much acetaminophen in there and the rest has to be nothing. So they're coming at it completely of what could go wrong, what happens if a child takes this, what happens if someone who's not a patient takes this, and very little thought into how can we make this program good for the people who actually need medicine.
It always goes back to the children. We're always worried about the children, Don't let children have access to cannabis. It's the terrible cannabis. In the meantime, children have access to tobacco, and they have access to alcohol, and they have access to harsh pharmaceutical pills that kill you, like oxycodone and fentanyl. Worse, when they get addicted and they are forced to go to the black market, the fentanyl is laced with W18, which is 100 times more stronger, and 0.05 milligrams will actually kill you dead. So what kind of an argument is this to keep it away from the children? From what I heard, many epileptic children have benefited greatly from cannabis, and I don't think there's really any negative side effects from those benefits, unlike the pharmaceutical poisons that are currently being prescribed to people that obviously have a very high LD50, or a very low LD50, whereas cannabis has no LD50. People don't perish from cannabis. I'm always wondering about this argument about, you know, that we have to keep it out of the hands of the children, because obviously you would much rather have your children stealing your alcohol and your pharmaceutical pills out of your medicine cabinet. For me, I just don't really understand it myself, but hopefully we can move to a place eventually where it's not vilified. Yes, so someone just yelled out, they don't want us to see through the bullshit. If you give cannabis to a child, they will see through the bullshit. So there it is. I'm not promoting that the kids go out and get high. What I'm promoting is that we stop using children as the shield to keep cannabis from being accessible to adults. We are adults. We have adult use with tobacco and alcohol and many other things. There are things that we don't want children doing, but we don't shun those things from society. They still exist, and they're still accessible to adults. So all we're asking for is for the same thing for cannabis.
And it's a plant.
What's that?
Why are plants? How can plants be illegal or legal? It's something that naturally grows out of the ground.
Yeah. Well, it's like
we have to spray poison on it to kill it and eradicate it, but I'm to the point where it's a plant, let it grow.
Indeed. Well, and also, because they've lied for so many years about the dangers of cannabis, now that they're coming out about cannabis and they found out about CBD and the lack of euphoria that you get from CBD, they have this situation where cannabis has become the ugly stepsister, put her in the back row, and then the CBD is the valedictorian, blonde-haired, blue-eyed dude who throws the best football. It's not really the case. THC shouldn't be treated any differently than CBD. They should all be sort of lumped into the same phytocannabinoids, terpenes, cannabis. We're fighting for the access. One of the things we do here on Hash Church is we discuss in a radical openness form of dialogue to try and get these conversations heard. And of course, we never know where they're going, but with 700 to 800 people who are watching currently, we do appreciate the attention that you guys are giving this. It lets us know that people are interested in this and they want to learn more.
It's like having a one-piece band. It can be done. There's a couple individuals out there like the Beardy guy that can literally make every single sound with his mouth and sing and rap and do everything in the drums and the bass. It's possible, but that's usually not how music's made. CBD can't stand on stage by itself and do what he does.
Yeah. So. You know what? A good proof of that is, have you ever seen Mick Jagger play music by himself without the Rolling Stones? It's like the most painful thing in the world. But then he gets on the stage with the Rolling Stones, and there's this weird synergy, this ensemble, this entourage that occurs where all of those members have created a new energy that otherwise did not exist in the singularity of each individual. And that's what makes the Rolling Stones, and that's why they've been doing what they've been doing for damn near 51 years.
Well, I posted, so that information's up. If you want to, I've got to run here soon, but if you want to look at the Hash Church group that I just posted in, I don't know how you want to get it out to your audience if they're not in this group.
Or we can just tell them.
You can just tell them?
Yep.
Okay, so if you go on to it, I know Scaldone's going to like this. I felt like when you post something like that, you should have all the tests. So if you go through it, basically that's my starting material. Some of you will get a very big kick out of this. I finally found a good use for Blue Dream. Blue Dream works great in candles, and it works great in converting into CBN. So for those that aren't Blue Dream fans out there, this finally has a purpose. But so I used Blue Dream, and if you look at Blue Dream, it was roughly 297 milligrams
terp candle
per gram. And then if you look at the terpene profile, this is pretty interesting. The terpene profile shows pinene, it shows some beta-caryophyllene, some humulene, B-pinene, it shows a couple little tiny nips of phytol and some other things at the bottom. And then it's like, it's saying about 10 milligrams of that 300 milligrams. So not a lot of terpenes in the keef itself, but if you look at the conversion, this is phase 1, you could see it went from, the picture shows it going from a blonde kind of nice sift or keef, and then it's this kind of cocoa product I was telling you about. It's like you could see the degradation in it, and it ends up becoming like a lightweight brick in the process that I'm doing. Again, no chemicals on this at all, so not even water or anything like that. You can see the conversion where it's almost converted all the way, the THC out. So the next test that I'm literally waiting on should show the final conversion to 100%. There won't be any THC left. I shared that test result with you guys from when I was in Denver as well, but I think it kind of got overlooked when we were talking about it. But this way it's a lot better. Now here's what's interesting. This is what's interesting. The terpene profile of the CBN after it's converted, look at the spikes on those particular, not that they're a lot, but all the pinene's gone, all these other things have obviously boiled off and they're gone, but you've got a little bit of a spike in the bottom, the it looks like geratoline acetate and valencian and phytol made it through. So those spikes that are there, they didn't boil off or they didn't degradate off. They made it
Yeah,
through.
those are just higher boiling sesquiterps. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not very familiar.
Sesquiterps.
So they made it through the process, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And
Yeah,
Tony, what color is the product?
If you're
when
not
it's
limiting air
100%?
exchange and you're not trapping what's going in and out, you are going to lose some stuff because you definitely need air to come in to do that oxidation, which means that you're going to be able to, essentially boil stuff through that opening, right? If it's exchanging air between inside the reactor and out.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Sam.
No problem. Tony, what color was it when it was 100%?
What color is it when it's pure CBN?
Correct.
Well, you can see there's a little picture on there in the group. It gets to like a very almost like coffee, like a red, like a red dirt color.
Yep. Because this is pure CBN.
Let me see.
It's a very off-white amorphous powder.
Looks like somebody used hexane or something like that to clean it. They probably washed it or did something chemically.
Chromatography.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the color is primarily the degradation of the flavonoids, which are the most prevalent compounds in there, and there's only a very, very little amount of those compounds in there, and a little bit of oxygen will degrade those to, red, dark brown.
So yeah, I mean, it's important, like when you're going to make CBN, to kind of get the before and after and see what's going on with it. Some labs, depending on this of like what you put it in, like the guy was talking about coconut oil and different types of like glycerin or agave when people make their infused products, those sometimes can kind of give those. It seems to give labs a little bit of a problem. So I think like in this state, this is just raw sift into a CBN, so you can kind of see the rawness of like the conversion and everything. There's no.
We had a discussion on our panel yesterday. I was on a panel with AC from Eden Labs and Horatio, the LHO gentleman, and basically we were speaking about the differences between whole plant medicine and the whole breaking it down into components, and what was sort of the better of the two. In the end, I sort of thought that both were very important. But Tony, maybe if you could mention like how much learning and education has occurred with you just in, fractioning and separating out all these compounds into pure form. Whether you're using them in pure form as a medicine or not, how much has it taught you about using cannabis as a medicine by being able to break them up into their components?
Well, I think first of all, the challenge that I kind of took on myself a while ago, which was kind of suicidal back then maybe, was to try to figure out how to do it without chemicals, or solvents. Yes, so in some cases we're using water to wash. We're not using water particularly as a solvent, but besides water, not using any chemicals or washes or hexane, or different types of acids or any other kind of wash. So that first is the hardest challenge. How do you do things without chemicals? Because there's nothing wrong with them, and if you do them right or use solvents, you can get to pharmaceutical grade or pure extractions, that everybody's striving for. And if you do it really right, you can get it down to 0 parts per million, not have any of those solvents that seem to be present. Obviously we talked about proton NMR, and there's always going to be a footprint left. But the challenge is always like, how do you make whole plant medicine without any footprints that are broken down into categories that we can deliver them to patients and ourselves in the safest way possible. So in that challenge, everything that I do with hash or extracts today has come from those challenges that I've faced with, say, trying to create these prana lines. Prana 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each one of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 has been anywhere from a 3-month to 6-month to a year process of understanding. And there's a lot of failure and a lot of like letdown. I would say most of everything that's created is from failing over and over, and then one day sitting there without any answers, and then you go, oh, wait a minute, I think I can do this completely an opposite way. Usually that thought usually comes creatively from an outer experience, like not working with it right away, but taking a break, or you go to a park, or you go watch a movie, or other things in life would inspire me to think outside the box. So like seeding with like crystals, you know, finding that terpenes have different accelerations when you want to make crystals and when you're like trying to grow crystals. As example, the strawberry banana goo in this clear sap, one little dust, one little anything, boom, this thing starts turning into a crystal within an hour, 2 hours instead of weeks. The AC/DC, watching the terpenes interact with the AC/DC oil and how fast that can grow and make these little crystals teaches you a lot, you know, and every step along the way is inspiration to the next chapter. So I think I was explaining this to someone else. It's like the reason why I obsessively stay up and you're seeing a lot of extracts or hash being made is because there are actually little breakthroughs that happen making those categories of prana that then are now swinging into, like, that turned into Blue River. Like I wanted terpenes in my activated line, that turned into Blue River. I wanted to create different types of pure products without using you know, albuterol or butane or anything like that, and those end up creating different types of solventless saps or different types of products that are coming out. You know, it's a creation that keeps moving forward. Like you said, it's like, you know, I've come to the realization that I don't know anything about it, and every day I start my day acting like I don't know anything about the plant. You know, like, I don't know, anything's possible at this point. I see things happen all the time, and so the only thing we can do is write those things down and keep these little data points, and then work on them and try to get them to the purest form that we can. Just like what you do with SIFT. Like you'll see a SIFT and you're like, ah, it's 90%, it's 91, it's 95. Every time you'll be like, well, it's not really 99. You know, same thing with these products, like with the full melt, the freeze dryer. These things are constant progression, and how do we get them better and better and better? I think eventually you do reach a wall, and then you're satisfied. I'm very satisfied with the way these solventless saps are coming out, the texture of them, the quality of them, the modulation of them, and I think that I concur that a 15 to 20% terpene volume with a flower or hash rosin is a really, really, really good balance, and it's a really good combination of modulation. I've taken it up to 50-50, which is the terp oil, which is amazing too. I mean, it tastes exactly like the garden in your mouth. It has a totally different response. I almost feel like tryptophan or some other kind of almost psychedelic when you hit 50-50. You know, at 20%, 15%, I feel everyone's happy. It's a great response. Like, I'm uplifted. Like, it's not like...
I use the term giddy, honestly, because after people puff the terp oil, they are giddy.
Giddy. Yeah, it's different. And then you look at what 1% does. 1% to 3% in flowers. It has a different change. But I think when I've been smoking a lot more flowers and trying to do a comparison of that. The flowers themselves are, like we talk about the quote-unquote contamination, it's really the leaf matter. You know, we're converting leaf matter into smoke, and then we're inhaling that. So of that smoke, I would love to see, like Scaldone, he once upon a time talked about this. Let's get the smoke from a joint, the smoke from like a D-nail, a vapor, a smoke, and different types of actual clouds that he can put into that machine. And I think we would find why, perhaps why we're getting a response from smoking flower versus a hash in a vaporizer,
I also think a lot, I've mentioned it before on Hash Church, but a lot has to do with the surface area that you're inhaling the smoke from, or the vaporizer you're using. These things are affecting the molecules that you're inhaling, and it's bizarre, but there really is a science behind the thermodynamics and how certain temperatures are kept and released from titanium or quartz or sapphire, and they change the effects. When I take low temp dabs on sapphire, it's very different from like a high temp dab on a titanium. And when you spend as much time as we do sort of perfecting these extractions and getting them to the proper ratios, you are going to pay attention to the methodology or the apparatus that you're using to consume the final product. Because I think it's going to be, well, it's constant, right? There's constantly people trying to push new products to better this, but you really don't see. I mean, the electric nail was a big one. When the electric nail came out, that was a game changer for a lot of people. But we haven't seen as many game changers as I thought we would see in the industry, focused on like really getting these cannabinoids and terpenes inhaled without altering or changing the molecule, but letting them get into our body and then letting our bodies interact with them the way they were extracted and the way they were tested, not test for something and then throw it in your stomach and it changes into a bunch of other things. That's just not quite what I'm looking for.
Well, as you know, that's around the corner. We've been talking about it, and the next thing will be ultrasonic handheld nebulizers that can break down they're
here today, actually, Tony.
Came today?
Today. Yeah, they're here today. I'll try to get them on later if they're around.
Okay, yeah, that's funny. But those I think that that took there's special companies out there like that. There's a friend of ours that we're working with on using their device. But medical devices, it takes a certain type of group and certain companies to really create those types of products. And this is going to be able to monitor the milligrams and not cause combustion and be able to nebulize instead of vaporize.
Tony, I tested a nebulizer, an ultrasonic nebulizer, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
We used it, and it worked, but I prefer smoking.
Well, I've used them in the past, and I feel like they've come a long way. So when you see the next wave, the next generation, what's happening now, I'm eager and I'm excited to see it. Cause
what we found was the most important thing was you had to get your particle size way down, because otherwise it makes you cough and retch when you take a hit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, these are the next moves, Like it has to. Like Bubbleman says, there's got to be the next moves in production in that. So, I think you'll see a lot more progress as cannabis starts to get in more of the mainstream, and companies can bank, and there's more of a legal mechanism. But
for 10 seconds.
Anyway, to answer your question, Bubble Man, it's like I've been on that mission of trying to create those, as we call, organic compounds without chemicals, and those actually led into different divisions because yes, it's a lot more work, to create them than running, say, load a chamber, run a solvent through it, get THC out, and that byproduct, no one talks about the byproduct of butane flowers. Ask them what they do with their product. Ask anyone. It sits in a bag or it sits in a bucket. It smells awful. The herb is then disposed with post-run butane. That's what they do with it. So there's environmental impacts that I don't like with certain types of solvents that have to be. What's that gonna look like in the mainstream if we're doing 1 billion pounds a month of cannabis, and then you're blowing it all, and then you're taking that byproduct and then you're dumping it. Well, where is it getting dumped?
You don't have to dump it, Tony, though. You can use it to light your barbecue.
Yeah, I always ask people that. I'm like, well, what are you doing? Don't worry, I purge it. I'm like, where do you purge it? Into the air?
Yeah, I think that's what they miss. So, like that, where does not the footprint of the medicine, what's the footprint of the environment as well? So that's that's also the next consciousness that we need to evolve in our industry, not just with packaging of things, like our industry where everything has to be child-proof and certain packaging and double packaged and triple packaged. Like, I understand the safety of it, but there's got to be a point where that also emerges into a more sustainable practice. I mean, our planet is expanding at rapid rates of population. We only have so much virtual water, so much raw resources, and I'm big on that too. So that's also part of the reason why I always try to seek out ways to do it without solvents. But I don't have anything against them. I think they serve their purpose, and when they're used correctly, they make good medicine. I like what Horatio does because he uses like a terpene. He uses a D-limonene as his base. So he's obsessed with trying to figure out ways to pull out different cannabinoids using D-limonene. So that's also commendable. So like there's no one else on the planet's trying that. To create those type of different products using that base, and I feel like that's what I've been trying to do for the last year, is push that direction of no solvents in that process too. A lot more work, and you got to be able to distribute the hash that doesn't melt, it doesn't press out, and so that's what I told a lot of people at the booth. They were asking like, how come we don't have other runs? And I'm like, as Bubble Man, I just give you first run, 5, 6 star, 73, 90, 120. Anything that's not that gets pressed out. Anything below 4 or 3, I'm just collect, and then it eventually works itself into prana.
Tony,
yeah.
Where do you think Horatio gets his limonene from? How do you think it's produced?
He buys it from Blue River.
Oh, he does, really?
No, he doesn't.
You got me, man. I believed you.
He buys it wholesale, 5-gallon drums of it.
Yeah, but then he cleans it. So he does. He also, I think,
he clean it because it contains citrus oils that are not D-limonene.
Yeah, he showed a video of how he cleans it, which I thought was really cool. And that's, with everything else, there's safety there. And he preaches that quite often. It's like if you're going to try to follow his tech, he showed you a few. He's like a magician that said, "Hey, let me show you. I have 10 tricks that I do on stage, and I want to show you how we cut bodies in half." And then he just simply showed you a portion of his show of where a human body gets put into a box and is cut in half and split.
Well, I showed him where in the chemical literature all those tricks were already discovered. So I'll take the credit of pointing him to the chemical literature on limonene that already existed.
Okay.
There it is.
There it is.
It's about time I did something useful.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think especially in the black and gray and emerging markets, the quality of solvents isn't always that great. People can get super high quality scientific solvents, HPLC grade or whatever, and they're not going to have much residue left over. Those are super expensive, and most people don't have access. So when thinking about sustainability of the cannabis industry, it's the same thing with the organic. It's not just about the product that you're going to consume, but how it affects everybody else. We're all on this planet together. What I do affects everybody else, and that's what we have to think about. It's not just, is the patient going to get residues in their product? Is there going to be heavy metals? It's like, what are we doing to our children's future in making these choices? And that's so important. And going back a bit to choosing individual cannabinoids and terpenes. I think a lot of the future there, at least for the whole plant people, because there's going to be a divergence here, right? A bifurcation of pharmaceutical preparations and whole plant preparations. There's a lot of people trying to make cannabinoids in yeast, and they're going to add it back to, you know, whatever terpenes they get from whatever sources. And then the other line is going to be whole plants. We're going to specialize the plants and the genetics to individual people and populations. So we can find plants that have high CBG and high THCV. CBN, you'll have to do some sort of process. This is a degradation product, but I think that's a lot of the future. And then you can have, you know, special terpene profiles in these and take, you know, a CBG strain and mix it with your CBD or your THC strain and get whatever mix you want. But I think genetics and making those the plants to produce what you want is the future. And then we can use all sorts of solventless procedures to extract those cannabinoids and finally blend them with whatever carriers or whatever you're going to ingest them. It could be dabbing or vaporizing or eating or any other ingestion you can think of.
I was just trying to reply to some people. The chat room's getting all gnarly. Yes, it's Ego Church. Feel free to leave if you're not enjoying the show. Anyone who's watching, if you have a negative, sarcastic comment to make in the chat room, maybe just go look in the mirror and say it to yourself. For those of you that are in the chat room, 740 people. Yeah, we're just talking. We're just sharing information. If you don't like the information we're sharing, by all means, fuck off. Johnny B. All right, Tony Split, he's got to run. He's heading over to Chalice. We've been at it for a couple of solid hours. We might continue for a little bit longer. Definitely thank Daniel for coming out from Whistler Medical Corp. Much appreciated to get your perspective, and it's nice to have Chris Bennett right before that, and it was good to have Joel in before that.
I'm having a fantastic here time, Mark. How are you doing up there?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. You know, I'm kind of looking forward to getting to the booth eventually. It was really nice to meet all the different people at the conference and have some pretty interesting discussions. Forward motion. Forward motion. All right. Well, maybe we can get another guest. Johnny, find us a guest or what? Johnny B, go find us a guest. Well, in the meantime, we've got a conference that we're going to be doing in Jamaica on the 2nd, 3rd and 4th, I believe, or 3rd and 4th. I have it on my Facebook event, September in Montego Bay. We're going to be doing, oh, it's Mother Lover. It's D420K, Mother Lover. We're going to be doing a conference in Jamaica in Montego Bay. Our company, Cannabinoid Research and Development, will be there with a booth. We're hoping to get a bunch of other good companies representing. They've got a good speaker list. And Jamaica is a really great place to enjoy a conference. So if you can squeeze it out early September, it's before school starts for the kids. Should be a pretty good one, Mo Bay. So what's going on, Mother Lover?
Long ripping.
Long ripping?
I had a couple.
How are you enjoying the show, D?
It's nice. You meet a lot of people, share a lot of ideas. It's great here.
Yeah,
knowledge.
It's good to see you at the shows, man. I've never really, you know, this is a new thing for me. You started coming to the, I guess Lift was the first one.
Yep.
And now you're here at all the shows. It's wonderful. There's Hilary Black.
I'll be at the next Lift event as well.
Next one in September here.
Excellent. Well, I will as well. Hello, Hilary. We're going to have you come over and, oh, that's not Hilary. So we're going to have her come over and talk to us at one point in time.
I think he's getting her over right now.
Sweet.
I think he's on his way with Hilary right now.
Well, let's get a nice loud
Ball rip, Mother Lovers.
classic on Hash Church. 94 episodes in a row, and D420K has been telling you to take bong rips. Every one of them. Because, you know, one of the things that we like about doing Hash Church is, you know, we want to share wonderful information and bring really articulate speakers up, but we don't want to hide our cannabis use, and we don't want to hide our love for cannabis, so we want to sort of normalize the idea of having articulate, intelligent conversation, much like they're doing at the expo. But what you don't see at a lot of these expos is you don't see people actively engaged in using cannabis while they're talking about it. And in fact, most of the expos that I've gone to and conferences have celebrated using alcohol at the end of the night. The majority of the speakers and the people that are here will end up drinking, and I'm just like, you know, as we talk about cannabis and as we celebrate cannabis, don't forget to use cannabis. You know, don't get lost in this business aspect of it all being about business and monetary gain. It's really about sharing, and it's about enjoying cannabis. We didn't learn about this from a university degree. We learned about this from smoking cannabis. That's how the cannabis activists became activists. They smoked cannabis, they got a message from smoking cannabis, and it led them down a path of activism and sort of promotion of this plant. So for whatever you do, if you're finding yourself getting involved in cannabis or a cannabis business, don't forget to use cannabis, whether you're just taking it orally for the endocannabinoid saturation effects but not the euphoria, or if you just want to enjoy cannabis and get high. Either way, don't forget to enjoy cannabis. That's what I wanted to say.
We're going to have Hilary on here real quick, so I'm going to duck out. But I wanted to put out there a question that I've been thinking about, was put on to me. Now, the star chart, the star system, the star ratings. Is there a 7-star? What makes a 5-star? What makes a 3-star? What are the ratings? Maybe this isn't a question now for the panel, but when the whole panel's up there, or Skunk Man Sam, what is the star chart? Need it explained, maybe during this episode or another one.
Well, I don't think there is a common star chart used around the world. But
well, Jeff Church created a star chart, the Bizarre Brothers, mainly for melt factor. So it's
what was the top number?
Top number was 6, and that's something that would burn, drip. Basically, that was what you have, Sam, a 6-star. And then, of course, you know, Horatio added terpenes to some dry sift, and he called it a 7-star. And then Tony added terpenes and something else to bubble hash, and it was 8-star. So you can go as high as you want, I guess. But legitimately, what they started it for was because they had a small little group. They would sell hash and enjoy hash, and people wanted to know the melt factor because dispensaries and other companies.
Well, I do agree with you, Marcus. You can definitely rate melt factor because that's obviously visual. But when it comes down to rating more than that, when you want to rate down, because everybody has different preferences.
But it was never about more than that. It was only about the melt factor.
I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, the melt factor was what they did it for. One being, you know, very low and crumbly and burny and not melting at all. And then
well, you and I started that with full melt clear dome.
Yeah, absolutely. That was like very, you know, late 90s, early 2000s.
First there was full melt, then there was full melt clear dome.
Yep, exactly. And full melt clear dome was basically the 6-star. I don't get too hung up on the star rating systems. People are confused by it. They associate it with rosin, and I'm like, rosin is an oil. There's no melt factor to that. You can't star rate an oil because it obviously is a liquid when you heat it up. Well, I think we're going to try and get Hilary up here for a little bit, founder of the BC Compassion Club, currently working for BedroCon, and really just a good friend of mine. Been friends with Hilary for I don't even know how long, but definitely since we were children. There she is. How's it going? Welcome. Yes, I'll give you the mic, and I just thought you could tell us a little bit about either the conference, your media interviews, the companies you're working for, whatever you want to talk about. I just wanted to pass you the mic and let you share a little bit with Hash Church.
Hello, Hash Church world. I rarely see you because usually on Sunday mornings the last thing that I want to do is talk about cannabis because I talk about it all week long.
Yep.
But we're here at the conference talking about cannabis. There was something that was up for me this week that I thought was really relevant to this community in that the media was talking a little bit about THC caps. Well, not capsules, but limits. And so, you know, part of the survey that the government has put out inviting people to give their invitation around, or not their invitation, but their input around what the future regulations are going to look like. One of the questions is about THC limits. And so you know, Mark and I had some conversations before I did my interviews, and we were talking a lot about how we need to stop demonizing THC, that in many ways, you know, CBD has been used as like the cannabinoid superstar that is like harmless and it won't get you high, and don't worry about that nasty THC, we can just use CBD. And as we're moving forward into legalization, it's really important that we don't have a hangover from the reefer madness era where we continue to sort of demonize THC, because of course we know that it's a wonderful molecule that's got all kinds of great therapeutic applications, and that when you use more potent strains or extracts, you're inhaling less plant matter, and actually your more potent products can be healthier. And I wish that we could get to the point with our government where instead of them talking about limiting THC levels in the products that are available in the regulated market, we should be teaching people about solventless hash. We should be teaching people about the healthiest possible ways to use their really potent extracts.
So, agreed, absolutely. I thought it was a great interview. She did it on CBC, I believe, and yeah, it was just, you know, not to treat THC like the black sheep of the family. You know, the THC is extremely powerful and extremely important to cannabis as both a recreational and a medicinal, and as well as a preventative. I always like to add that third one that often doesn't get added when we talk about recreation versus medicinal, because preventative is also, so you don't have to get sick to use cannabis medicinally, and we call that preventative. So it's
terrible lighting up here.
You don't like the lighting? Don't worry about the lighting. Yeah, I know. Here, I'll push us back a little bit. But this little microphone is the one that's picking us up for the people on Hash Church. So we do have 700 people watching live right now from around the world, and maybe everyone could tell us where they're watching from right now. We could whip through a quick little. This is always fun when the chat room tells us where they're all tuning in from. It usually gives us a good idea of, you know, the sort of amount of the world that we're covering in this dialogue and in this conversation. And I definitely want to thank Salome and the Cambridge House for allowing me to do Hash Church here at the...
We get somebody from Holland, that's exciting.
Oh yeah,
Oregon,
Boulder,
Santa
Holland,
Barbara,
Seattle, Ontario, Denmark,
Tennessee,
Oakland,
Mars.
Australia, New York,
Amsterdam,
Skunkman Sam.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Sam's here?
Sam's here. Sam's with us.
I'm watching you every move, Hilary.
Yeah, we know. That's why you're not on camera. We're watching Sam's every move, but he's a doll.
One of our,
Look at this. UK, Brazil.
One of our forefathers and most important teachers.
Yes, exactly. Hilary just mentioned one of our forefathers and one of our most important teachers, Skunkman Sam. Definitely, I was saying earlier to Joel, he may very well have forgotten more about cannabis than this entire room currently knows, but me included. But then again, I did earlier say that the more I learn about cannabis, the less I feel I know. Because it seems to open up, you know, more and more and more. And so you realize as you dig deeper into these subjects and you uncover a new subject, you realize that's an entire subject you don't know about. You have to now. It's libraries and libraries of books could be filled and should be filled on the amazing benefits of cannabis. Still pumping out Sweden, Illinois, Frisco, NorCal, Phoenix, Arizona. Very nice. Maine. Good to see Connecticut. Definitely, Glasgow, Scotland. Haywards Heath, England. It is very cool. I love to see all of those. And the other one we usually do, which we'll do right away, is what is everyone smoking on right now? What are you all enjoying while you're watching Hash Church here? We're actually in our second. There you go. There you go. You'll see them write what they're smoking right now on the big screen. It'll start coming up soon, and I'm sure there's going to be some great cultivars in there for sure. Yeah, man.
Okay, I'm gonna go.
You gonna go?
Yeah. I'm gonna try to find you.
All right. Well, thanks, Hilary, for stopping in and just making a quick little hello for us. We appreciate it.
Bye.
See you later. All right. So I've got still a little bit today of being at my booth. For those of you that are here at the event, feel free to come by and check out 18 cultivars of terpenes and all the bubble hash tools that I randomly and every day do. Something I don't talk about very often here on Hash Church, but I actually sell products called bubble bags and other hash making tools that people make a lot of these products with. I feel, you know, in 93 episodes is probably enough that I can now mention them. I never wanted to shamelessly plug my own products, but when we're talking about water hash, you know, the majority of the times here in Hash Church, we're talking about hash made with bubble bags. Some bags that I came up with about 17 years ago. Had originally seen a 2-bag system in Amsterdam. They had only been on the market for a few months. Was very interested in becoming a distributor for them. It didn't work out. And just like that, my wife and I started a little company in our home with a sewing machine, a computer, and a digital camera. And 17 years later, you know, we have fresh eddies, we have bubble bags. We've taught literally thousands of people worldwide how to make hash. And we pride ourselves in the knowledge that literally tons and tons and tons of hashish have been produced using our bags in almost every country in the world. And so that's quite an exciting thing, to give people the power and the ability to extract glandular trichome heads at a near pharmaceutical grade in their kitchen or their living room, wherever they choose, their backyard. This is a powerful thing, and I think back in 1999 it was a real game changer. Before we had a lot of the concentrates, you know, there was always oil, but we didn't have the concentrate same level. Sorry, Johnny, I gotta mute you. Did you have something to say, bud? Great. Yeah, let's bring up Rob. He is absolutely. Hey, right here, dude. Good to see you. Welcome to Hash Church.
Hey, thank you very much.
Rob or Robert?
Rob Laurie.
Okay, Rob Laurie in the house. So you want to give us a little breakdown on what you've been spending the last year or so doing here in Vancouver?
That sounds good. So where am I looking? That's the camera there?
Yeah, right in there.
All right. So my law firm, Lucy Law Corporation, we've been working doing essentially representing about 22% of the Board of Variance clients and dealing with the Board of Variance procedures. I had my first Board of Variance for Vancouver Pain Management last month, and we were very successful, had a 5-vote sweep. We're able to prove site-specific hardship, and we were also very successful in getting the members of their dispensary. I think we had 37 people, including JMAC, was out to speak, and we had a very good result. And in addition to that, Kurt Tucson and I have been working and collaborating on the Vancouver City injunction situation. He's got
Explain to the audience a little bit about what these things are. So this is basically fighting for the ability and the rights for dispensaries to sell cannabis as a medicine, but also for lounges, I'm sure, vapor lounges. And so give a little bit of a background.
So all of those issues are actually being lost in this shuffle because the recent issue involving the City of Vancouver petitions for injunction, what those are about was because these dispensaries simply are not operating without a business license, the City of Vancouver is saying that, well, you don't have a business license, you can't be in business, so you have to close down. Well, they didn't even have the right bylaw listed in the petition. They said that according to bylaw 4450, section 3.1 says that you can't operate a business or trade without a business permit. Well, actually, it's bylaw 3575 that states that. So I suggested to Kurt, let's just respond to the city and basically say, we don't know what the hell you're talking about, because you have to plead the proper case.
Right.
So we did that and agreed to dates to file so we could delay this out. But we did put the city on notice of our intention to bring a constitutional challenge under sections 2, section 7, and section 15 of the charter.
So here's a question I have for you. Is this mainly a provincial thing right now, or are you doing this federally as well? And just for the Americans that are watching, they have this state thing going on. We have a federal thing going on, but we have really no provincial mechanisms that allow for these businesses to exist legally like they do down in the state mechanisms. So just maybe kind of explain a little bit about the differences between the provincial and the federal, and whether or not we're going to be in a position that we can use our provincial laws to create something unique in this province.
Okay. Well, I'll do my best to try to do a very brief constitutional law 101, both American, Canadian, so we can get what's going on. So the United States, like Canada, is still a federal system, but the state law in certain instances trumps federal law. Whereas in Canada, we have the rule of called, well, under federalism in Canada, paramountcy, meaning that federal laws will trump provincial law. So under the Canadian Constitution, you have Section 91 deals with federal law, Section 92 deals with provincial law. So where you have an overlap is, well, the feds are have jurisdiction to deal with healthcare. That's a federal issue. They also have a jurisdiction to deal with criminal law. However, under the provincial law, the provinces are responsible for the implementation of criminal law. They're also under Section 9213, I believe, provincial or provinces have the power to regulate industry and trade. So let me just explain this in a very simple context. Canada is one of the only countries in the Western developed world that has provincial securities regulators. So if you deal with, in the States, any of our American friends out there, and you want to list public securities, you have one federal regulator. That's the Securities and Exchange Commission. However, in Canada, each province, more or less, has its own securities regulator, because that goes back to the Constitution and so on. But you can see that securities, like cannabis, is now a international, issue that certainly transcends provincial, federal, and municipal law.
Right.
So there is really no law at the moment. The municipal government in Vancouver has said, well, we consider the dispensary situation a crisis. And because of this crisis, we need to regulate it, similar to what Vancouver did with the safe injection center.
Right.
But, and here's the big but, you have the federal government saying, no, you can only get cannabis through a mail order system involving LPs. That's going to be really difficult to enforce. And politically, look at the situation. Justin Trudeau is a Liberal. Well, big Bay Street LP money was coming in to fund the Liberal campaign, but there's also a lot of money that came to the Liberal Party on the West Coast. Growers and political groups that are involved with cannabis were also involved with that. Right. So here you have the first time when a prime minister meets with a with a municipal figure, the mayor, right. And that hasn't happened since 1972 when Trudeau Sr. met with the mayor of Vancouver. But we've had two recent meetings with the Prime Minister and our mayor. I'm pretty sure the meetings went something like this. Prime Minister says to the mayor, Mayor, your municipal dispensary program is, forgive my language, fucking up our federal program. You better do something about it. Municipal mayor says back, fine, but we need TransLink money. Where do you think they got their TransLink money? So,
well, that was billions, Or hundreds of millions?
30 million, I believe. But where we're going with all this is where this dispensary issue is really coming to foot here is there was never an intention, I believe, to regulate dispensaries. It was not a regulation policy. What was put in place was an elimination strategy, right? Because if liquor and alcohol and tobacco can be sold within 200 meters of school, then why do we need the difference for cannabis when, if used as directed, alcohol and tobacco will kill you? At least you give a little benefit of a doubt that there might be some help from cannabis. Yeah. So why are we treating it this way? Also, some of the regulations like no dispensaries in the Vancouver Entertainment District makes no sense. I live in the Granville Entertainment District. So you're telling me that I can go down to Granville Street, I can eat cheap food, I can go to endless nightclubs, I can see strippers now at the Granville Strip, I can buy some sex toys if I wanted to.
You can see 40 cops walking hand in hand.
I can see endless string of bars and nightclubs, But yet I could not go down there as a medical patient and buy cannabis in a reasonable, dignified patient manner. So something is wrong. And then you go down to Granville Street on Friday, Saturday nights. Well, by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, the dispensaries are closed. That's when the Granville Entertainment District essentially opens up. They close the streets to cater to the alcoholics and the bars and the teens and so on. All that policing money is not from dispensaries. It's to do with the nightclubs and the alcohol.
Yeah, and there's dozens of cops down there.
So if you want to deal with dispensaries, maybe 300 meters isn't necessary at all. Put a bouncer on the door and have a system of secure access.
How about we mention as well, I saw Kirk posted this, and this was in regards to cannabis tourism and how we absolutely can't have cannabis tourism. It's like, well, why not? We have beer and alcohol tourism. We have these other types of tourisms that exist. Why would we not want to promote cannabis tourism here in British Columbia?
Well, it makes no sense. In fact, I'll tell you a story of my personal life. Last year, I was on holiday with my family, and we went to the wineries in Okanagan. And I started calling them wine dispensaries just to piss my wife off, because they're basically the same thing. And I said to her, like, honey, isn't this amazing? You know, you're coming here and you're learning wine and you're getting to talk to the head vintners and the growers, and you can pick the dirt and smell it if you want and sample wines. And I said, that's fantastic. I mean, you're having a good time, right? And she said, oh, this is great. And I said, well, this is the fun I have when I go to a dispensary. Right? You know, I can walk in there, I can talk to the staff, find out about the product, and so on. So really, these wine dispensaries or wineries are a billion-dollar industry for the BC government. But, you know, this all comes from a legal background, too. Earlier on that trip, I had breakfast with Remo Colasante, the urban grower, and his wife. And I asked him, you know, how do you guys get your product there to, when you compete in tournaments internationally, how do you get your product into these other countries? And of course, even though it might be a legal tournament, getting the product there is still illegal. So I asked back at the winery some of these people, well, tell me the origins of some of your crops and grapes. How did they come to Canada? Well, sure enough, this was in front of my wife, they're like, well, we had to smuggle them into Canada in about 1965.
Right.
So the long and the short is a lot of good industry seems to come out of illegal industry. And I was talking to Jody about this the other day on Carly's show. I mean, stock car racing, NASCAR, is the most popular sport in the United States now. But what are the origins of NASCAR? It's bootlegging. It was where other bootleggers would take stock cars that you would buy direct from the factory and soup them up, so the cops would think it was just a regular vehicle. They would then go to either arrest the vehicle or apprehend it, and they couldn't keep up. Well, all these moonshiners and bootleggers like Jack Daniels got together and said, you know what, it sure is fun out racing the cops, but why don't we get a challenge and race each other? And that's how NASCAR started. They'd race on beaches, race on tracks. I mean, hell, the show Dukes of Hazzard, big hit of the 80s, was all about basically normalizing and glorifying alcohol prohibition. So who knows what legacies and industries we're going to have from cannabis dispensaries. But certainly we know that the city of Vancouver is doing their best to suppress this cottage grassroots industry.
Yeah, which is insane when you think of the numbers that this city has produced in cannabis over the years. How much of the cannabis used to get sent down to America before they entered into their dispensaries and their state laws. Billions and billions of dollars funded this province. Some years it was higher than forestry. They were literally guessing the numbers of cannabis smuggling down into the U.S. were higher than forestry numbers. So can you imagine the amount of money that got pumped into this province from cannabis industry, from cannabis growing and from cannabis selling? It's hard to imagine what this province would look like without it.
Well, also the numbers. So when they say that British Columbia is a $7.1 billion industry, well, what does that actually look like? Well, is that money that makes $7.1 billion actually coming back to Canada? So in the old days, you know, you'd have a pound or whatever, it would have to cross the border. You'd have to engage a border jumper or a broker to take that product across the border. if it made its way as far to Miami or New York, that pound of BC bud, which would have gone for maybe $2,500 in the good old days, certainly would go for $6,000 in Miami. So is that money, the $5,000 to $4,000 margin that's made on that product purchased in Miami, is that money actually making it back to BC? The answer is no. If you really know how the drug market works, if I'm a BC grower and I've got $250,000 worth of product that's now being sold in California, well, I'm not going to risk that cash being brought up to Canada. No, that money would be staked to a cocaine deal with a 5% markup or a percentage, which the product's going to go north to California, from California to BC, and once it crosses the border there, then the person that sent the marijuana south is going to realize a significant margin with a gain on top, and that money and product hasn't moved anywhere. It's just because of a illegal system which uses the same system and processes as the legal system.
Well, I can definitely say from knowing a lot of people involved in the trade in the late 90s in BC that an enormous amount of money came up. I saw it, millions of dollars in fact. People were not trading cocaine for pot. They were not cocaine people, they were pot people, but there were people in the industry that had money on both sides of the border, and it was very easy for them to be like, how much money do you need in Canada? Just if your money, yeah, it was just spot pricing. It was like a thing that a lot of the Asian gangs offered up, and it was a prohibition-based thing, but it was definitely something that was happening. We weren't getting the massive profits here, but we weren't also getting extradited and serving 10 to 20 years in prison down in the U.S. The people that were the smartest in Canada just sold their herb for a reasonable price. Trust me, when you're growing, hundreds of thousands of dollars in cannabis and you're selling it, that money is still going into the BC economy. Now, the majority of the money that he's talking about, because when you say, buying a pound for $2,000 US and selling it for $6,000, that's $400,000 profit on every 100 pack. And I knew people that, they could themselves almost do 100 packs just running it over the border in the Kootenays. That was a classic thing. Young people did that all the time because it was their trails. They grew up there. It wasn't really
Idaho.
Yeah, exactly. Right into Creston.
Waters Crossing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, everything you're saying is true. But there's, again, when Neil Boyd tries to do the calculation in his book, Bud Inc., about $7.1 billion industry, he even looks at that. But really, money's not the question. It's really the issue of what is this industry going to look like, and really what does reasonable, dignified patient access look like, because that's still what we're grappling with, which goes back to R.V. Parker. And the federal government keep inching and reluctantly moving closer to what a system of reasonable, dignified patient access looks like. And thank goodness that we have lawyers like Kurt Tusaw and John Conroy, and the Charter, or the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, because other jurisdictions like the States, although they have a Bill of Rights, it's really not the same as what we have in Canada. Australia doesn't. And while the UK and the EU both respectively were looking at something like this, but Canada is very unique. So let's see where we go from there.
Definitely shout out to those lawyers. Kurt was new when I had my problems. I was obviously, I helped the BC Compassion Club quite a bit. I helped the BC Compassion Club quite a bit in the past. I'm not sure why we're off the screen. I don't know.
Oh, here. I think it's this window here. Which looks like you got, try dragging this one over.
Yeah, well, no, this... But what I was going to mention was, sorry if you guys lost sight, but we can still hear. No, this is the window right on here. It's just not working anymore. I'd have to unplug it, plug it back in maybe. We'll see, maybe the sound guy will come back. But I was busted in 1998 at a roadblock with 16.5 pounds of cannabis. I was carrying that cannabis for the BC Compassion Club due to the fact that people thought it was a good idea to drive their cars through their front window and try to steal their safe. This was back in the 90s when not a lot of people were doing this. Hilary was really practicing a civil disobedience almost alone. She built an amazing team over the years, but in the beginning it was very much alone, that she was the one person standing up to practice this level of civil disobedience. So I kind of felt like I better at least get in behind her and do the best that I could do, offering to help with that cannabis, going through that roadblock at night. Ended up getting arrested. John Conroy, of course, represented me. That's Richardson versus Regina. and I was given in the end.
What year was that again?
1998 that I got the charges, about 99 or 2000 by the time everything finished. And
I just started law school in 2000.
Wow,
So,
wow, interesting. Yeah, so John did an amazing job.
Started law school.
The Judge Paradis, he had developed prostate cancer. He's passed away since from that. So I think he was listening a little bit, deeper than normal. And the BC Compassion Club patients coming and representing for me and showing up with little signs saying, "Show Mark compassion, for he showed us compassion." It meant a great deal to me, and I'll never forget being at the table, in court, and the judge is asking when the next court case should convene, and he's saying, "How is November 25th, Mr. Conroy?" And Mr. Conroy says, the 25th is no good for me. We'll have to push it into December. And then he puts his hand over his mic and he goes, "Because I'll be at the Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam with you." We actually went to the Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam together that year, which was a pretty cool thing for your lawyer to say while you're being charged for trafficking and possession. Definitely a unique situation. Anything else you want to share in regards to...
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to be on Hash Church at the Hemp Cannabis Conference, and it's been a cool weekend, and big shout out to Salome and her crew and to everybody I've met at the conference. And if you want to follow up with me or have any questions, you can reach me. My name again is Robert Laurie. I'm at LUmir Law Corporation, and I'm going to be down at the conference for pretty much most of the day.
Awesome.
Thank you again.
Yeah, man. Thanks for
good to have you. Thank you. All right.
All right, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Nice to have this variety of guests that you can just choose and pick from here at the conference. It's pretty sweet. Sometimes at Hash Church we end up in these sort of slow-going sections. I know the majority of my panel, Todd, Etienne, Tony, they're all enjoying Chalice right now, so very stoked for them to tell us all about that. When it's over, probably next week, we'll get a really good lowdown from the three of those guys. And I guess in the meantime, I could talk a little bit about some of the things that I'm involved in. Company in Jamaica that we started a few years back called Cannabinoid Research and Development is in the midst of applying for licenses, along with the rest of the companies that are finally in that situation. Jamaica's been pretty fast, watching and following the rest of the world. I'm sure some of you even saw their newspaper article of how, first they decriminalized two ounces. This is how fast Jamaica moves, which is awesome. They decriminalized 2 ounces for everyone, and then within 2 years of that, they proposed to put kiosks at the airports where you can actually buy your herbs or your concentrates. So you would show up at the airport, you get stamped at the immigration, you might go to the next desk where they may say, would you like a smoker's license for your stay? I don't know, it's going to be some sort of a money grab, but really, who cares? I mean, if I can get a little license from Jamaica that says I'm allowed to smoke in Jamaica, I'll pay $50, I'll pay $100, whatever it is, and then go to the kiosk if you prefer. I'm not sure I would prefer to do the kiosk thing. Generally speaking, in Jamaica, the worst herb has always been at the airport. But we'll see what happens there. It's definitely an interesting scenario with how they're looking at. You can go on the website actually, and you can look at all of the regulations and the policies that they have in place, as well as the applications that are available. There's about a half a dozen to a dozen licenses, from research and development to processing to the pharmacy, which is a dispensary, the herb house, which is a dispensary where you can actually consume the product, which I thought was a great name, Herb House. So these are the different sort of things that you can acquire in Jamaica right now, and our company is obviously applying for the majority of them because we want to be as deeply involved as possible. And yeah, it's going to be a nice show in September in Jamaica, so I definitely hope to see some of you there. I know I'm going to be there, September 2nd to 5th. Won't you be able to travel with your hash back and forth to Jamrock? Well, that's a great question. Right now I'm currently not able to travel with my hash anywhere other than in Canada. I'm a federally exempt MMAR patient with a license to grow 99 plants and possess, I think it was about 650 grams, as well as 6,000 or 7,000 grams at my house Once the MMAR was under fire and MMPR was created, they slashed a few of the limitations for driving around with, so I think now I'm allowed 150 grams until the Health Canada comes out in August and explains to us the new regulations. So I'm able to take 150 grams anywhere in Canada, but even though there are, you know, Washington is a medical state, I could potentially get a license in Washington, but the problem is there's a federal border between the two places. So we're a federal law. We have to wait for America to become federal. Then reciprocity can occur between the two countries, and we would be able to potentially travel between our two borders with our medicine. So very much looking forward to that. Bubbleman, what do you think prices in Jamaica will look like? Well, you know, with cannabis, it's always funny because people always want to charge the most that they can possibly charge. It's a prohibition mentality. You know, once you can get $4,000, $5,000 for a pound, you never not want to get that again if you're in that mentality of prohibition-based profiting. For me, the profit margin of prohibition is terrible. Making money based on people going to prison is a terrible profit margin, and I truly believe that it comes with a karmic debt that you're going to have to pay off. I've been paying mine off from the time that I spent making profit off of cannabis, even though I was helping out the BC Compassion Club and I was doing all these little sort of philanthropic things. It still wasn't enough to pay off the karmic debt of, you know, selling so much cannabis for a profit margin that was based on people going to prison. I'm hoping that the new profit margin for cannabis will be based on standards, operating procedures, and quality and access. And those things, to me, you know, being able to make the best product possible and making it accessible to someone at a reasonable price, to me, is a great profit margin to get behind, particularly from a medical standpoint. I don't really have the same ethics when it comes to recreational standpoint. Do you want to create a business and sell cannabis products recreationally? I support it. But I definitely don't think that you have to go in with the same ethics that you do when you're dealing with patients. It's a recreation, it's a fun. People don't want to pay the price, they won't. But when it's medicine, it's different, and we need to make it accessible, both in price and availability, you know, to the people that need it. What do you say, Dee? Bringing in the treats?
Yeah, I thought I'd bring you something to eat.
So sweet. Well, I'll take it, man.
Rip, everybody. Get your pipes out, load them up.
Hell yeah. Bubbleman, do you think that Jamaica will be a top quality hash producer in the future? I think with the right growers and the right processors, and more importantly, very, very importantly, the right breeding. I personally think that the breeding has to be done immediately. It's the breeding of the cultivars that will really push Jamaica to the next level. I've spent 20 years going there. I can tell you that I can always find great herb, but I can also tell you that the majority of what people have access to, thanks to the pollen and the inbreeding, is very low quality in a sense. Not the THC content, not the terpene content, because the sun's very powerful and it definitely produces that. When I talk about the quality, I mean the power of the plant, the ability for it to fight mildew, the ability for it to fight bugs. Just the strength behind the genetics are deeply weakened from all the inbreeding that has occurred, and I think that, like Tony says, that lion needs to be bred back into the jungle, and right now they have a lot of kittens, and kittens don't fare well in the jungle. The jungle's a dangerous place. You need those lions to take care of business. So one of the projects that we're most excited about for Jamaica is to breed proper cultivars to grow in that environment, field environment, so that also, not just for us, but obviously for the Jamaican people, they'll be able to have access to that. Jamaican growers will be able to come and get access to these bred plants that they'll actually be able to plant in fields, and they'll see right away that their jobs will become much, much easier. Keep in mind, these poor Jamaican farmers, and I don't mean poor as in monetary, I mean, holy smokes, are they forced into the most ridiculous prohibition-based growing that you could ever imagine. They have to hide from the police and the military. They have to climb mountains and be very, very, very far away from roads and whatnot. Some of them will even plant acres of another crop, of peanuts or whatever, and they will actually tend and garden and process that entire crop of peanuts because that's their front story. When they get caught near their grow, they take the police to the peanut farm and they say, I'm a peanut farmer. Can you imagine planting acres of peanuts as your front to grow cannabis that you have to climb a mountain to get to the top of your field? These are all things that are going to change for the Jamaicans. They're not going to have to do that anymore as the law subsides, as we're allowed to do this. We're going to choose better agricultural properties. We're going to choose areas that are accessible by roads, and we're going to be able to be in large, flat, open spaces away from a lot of the mountainous growers. So I'm very excited for Jamaica. I think that you know, it's no big surprise that one of the most powerful musicians to ever sing about the plants, Bob Marley, came from Jamaica. You know, he lived in a very, very harsh environment. They called it the Dungle, which was basically where the jungle and the dump was combined. Trenchtown is a very harsh environment, and if you ever go there, you will see that it's a shocking environment for such an incredible, you know, messenger, prophet, if you will, to come out of. You don't think that you can get quality hash from almost any quality herb in Jamaica? No, Laszlo, I do not. I've made a lot of hash in Jamaica, both with sifting as well as bubble hash. And, you know, Sam could attest that you really have to know the right growers there and the people who have access to the right cultivars, because if you just grab anything and try to make some bubble with it, you'll end up with some hash, but you won't end up with what I would call, yeah, the highest quality, 60 to 70% THC, like 10 to 12, you know, 5 to 8% terpenes, maybe. Like the sun produces an incredible melt factor in Jamaican hash. What's next after dry sift?
Didn't we already have that? Wasn't that the rosin?
No, rosin is oil to me. I don't think rosin is after dry sift. I think the dry sift is potentially the holy grail. I mean, it is, in simplest form, the unadulterated profile of cannabinoids and terpenes extracted without any footprint. You're using just mechanical screen separation and some other little tricks and tips that we've shared over the years.
Actually, what it is micro-encapsulated cannabinoids and terpenes.
All right, say that again, Sam.
Micro-encapsulated with a natural wax covering.
Exactly, without any water solubles removed, which is really the only difference you get with the water hash, where you're removing water solubles. People that disagree with that can merely look at the color of the water. The last time I checked, it changes color every single time you wash. It never comes out clear, ever. So I'm not exactly sure of exactly the constituents that are in that water, but what a wonderful test that would be, wouldn't it, Mark?
Yeah, sure. Just to boil it down.
Yeah, just test it out, see what's in there.
Yeah. I'm sure that's been done, right?
You know, you would think it has been done, but I've never seen it, and I've been involved in this for almost 20 years.
Neither have I, but if you smell the water, it smells like terpenes.
Right.
How about your bubble hash water that you're taking? It's a solid. It's taking some color out. When you freeze that, the terpenes don't freeze, so the terpenes should be on top of that frozen matter.
Have you done this?
No, I haven't, but it makes sense, doesn't it?
It doesn't work. I've done it. I've tried it. I've seen a few people try it. I don't know why, but I've frozen gallons of bubble water, and it just turns to a puck, and there's nothing really floating on top the way you would see in a terpene extraction through like a hydrodiffuser or a vac diffuser or something like that.
Yeah, because it's soluble. It's soluble in the water phase, so it's instantly dispersed.
See everybody.
Thanks, Steve. Oh, we got another guest coming up here. I'm going to meet them at the same time as you guys. Hello. Welcome. All right, well, we're going to have to get you to do a little introduction. We've got about 600-700 people watching live right now here on Hash Church, and we've got a little conversation going on the side. And I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello. So I'm Dr. Natasha Riz, and I was speaking today about how cannabis can affect gut health and also how cannabis can affect skin health. So my background is in human nutritional sciences, and I have a PhD in experimental medicine, and I'm an expert in the gut. So basically, inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, those types of conditions can really be helped with cannabis, and I'm interested in pursuing research in those areas. And I also own Remy Organic Skincare and make topical anti-aging products with hemp seed oil.
Ah, great.
So,
I was going to say, when you mentioned that you were focused on skin, I thought for sure that you were reaping the benefits from the essential amino acid rich seed embryo of cannabis. So that's wonderful. I don't know if you could tell us a little bit about some of the things you've learned in regards to, I mean, we talk about the gut a little bit on Hash Church with Mark Scaldone, and he's another PhD chemist here in the room right now. And we talk about sort of, when you put cannabis into your gut, how there's all sorts of different chemistry going on there. And you may think that you're acquiring a certain ratio of cannabinoids, but once it kind of goes into the gut, it can change. And so have you learned much about that? Or?
Not really about that specific question, and I'm not sure if there's a lot of research quite there yet.
Right.
The research with cannabis on the gut is still pretty new, and so in my talk I kind of went over 6 main areas that cannabis could help with gut issues. And so one of the main ones is nausea and vomiting. So that was really one of the first things that THC in particular was shown to be medically helpful for. And
as an antiemetic.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And so it was originally shown to be really helpful for patients going under chemotherapy with cancer and suffering the side effects from that. And THC was very helpful for them. So just from anyone suffering with gut conditions who's suffering anxiety, vomiting, THC can be very helpful for that. Also for appetite issues and weight loss. So patients with Crohn's disease are often suffer from dramatic weight loss and wasting conditions. And so again, cannabis has been approved for wasting conditions with HIV and AIDS patients. So that this type of research is also applicable to patients with Crohn's and colitis. And then the area that I'm really interested in is inflammation. So there is a lot of preliminary work, test tube experiments, animal experiments, and some human experiments showing that cannabis is a very effective anti-inflammatory compound. And there's a lot of different compounds in cannabis that can calm inflammation. So for instance, THC, we know about that, but there's also CBD, and then you guys were talking about terpenoids. So people think terpenoids just smell nice and can affect your mood, but they also are very effective at targeting inflammation, in particular limonene, linalool. So there's a lot of different interactions going on with that.
Interesting. One of the questions that Brett Maverick, one of our fairly intelligent members of Hash Church here, he was wondering what your opinion is on the cyclical vomiting that doctors, he says like to, but often say that it could be in regards to cannabis. Do you think that because, I know that cannabis can regulate appetite both to increase an appetite or to suppress an appetite. I've known people to use cannabis to actually lose weight.
Yeah.
So it's obviously it can regulate these biological functions. If it is going to help certain people with nausea and vomiting, there may really be something to this, I can't remember the name of it, hyperemesis. Hyperemesis, right. So this is where people want to have showers and they tend to vomit over and over and over again. So what do you think of that? Like, is that something that for some reason the cannabis is interacting in a unique way? Because I know it's a very small part of the populace that occurs in, but that is something in the gut. It is something in regards to the antiemetic properties of cannabis working in the opposite way that they should be working.
Yeah, so lots of people are asking about this recently. So this is not a new condition. It's been around in the literature anyway for at least 10 years. And it is rare. There's some case studies reporting it, and I think this condition is often confused with cyclic vomiting syndrome, which is also another confusing condition where chronic vomiting can happen for a number of reasons, including just a stress response. So the thing that makes the cannabis hyperemesis syndrome unique is the patients seem to be get better by showering in hot water, hot baths. So that's kind of the thing. And also when they stop using the cannabis, the syndrome gets better. So that's really the only way they can actually tell at this point if it's due to cannabis. So there's a lot of confusion. I'm sure it's now with cannabis being more popular, maybe being over misdiagnosed. But again, I'm not a physician, so I don't see patients with this condition. I can just tell you what I've seen in the literature. They don't know why it happens. They think it's an overstimulation of the cannabinoid system, which maybe makes sense if you stimulate it to a certain extent. It can help with nausea and vomiting, but you know, too much stimulation can be an issue.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think is pretty neat is the hot showering. So this gives us some clues of why is heat helping, right? So cannabis doesn't just signal through CB1 and CB2 receptors. It also can interact with our TRPV receptors, transient potential receptor venoid, bad name, but TRPV, there's TRPV1 and multiple other ones. So these are receptors that play a role in pain and also heat. So when you put chili pepper on your skin and you feel that heat, that's the TRPV receptors that are responding to it. And cannabis can also signal through these receptors and interact with heat and pain. So I wonder even if it's something to do with these TRPV receptors, that maybe even some of the terpenoids or other things. And it's just kind of my musings. This hasn't been shown in any research, and really we don't know why it's happening.
Right. So in regards to Crohn's, you had mentioned, I have a good friend, Colton Turner, who's come on Hash Church. He's become well known. He had a very bad case of Crohn's. It seemed like it was going to kill him. His colon was just black in the photos, and he was very young at the time. He actually developed his Crohn's from drowning in a lake. He was saved from the drowning, but the shock to his system of drowning instigated and started Crohn's disease. So he was very sick. He was like 13 or 14 when it happened, so he was stunted in his growth. He stayed very small, obviously. He started taking cannabis capsules, and so his whole mission is that he has this, I'd rather be illegally alive than legally dead. And it's a very profound and powerful sort of story, but when you look at the photos of his colon now, they are so healthy and so pink that it almost seems as though it's a remission. Like, it doesn't seem like there's. Do you believe that cannabis has that ability to push Crohn's almost completely out of the body to the point where a person can live a normal life? Have you seen that?
Well, again, I don't personally deal with patients, so I can tell you what the literature shows and what the research shows. So you said a few interesting points. First one was that his Crohn's was triggered by a stressful environment or the drowning. So that's very common for these conditions to be triggered by a very stressful response. So that's one of the ways cannabis can help with these conditions, is it can bring this the system, our endocannabinoid system, that plays a very important role in bringing our body back to homeostasis. So if we can use cannabis or even trigger our endocannabinoid system through natural ways, I mean, there's other foods, herbs, dietary strategies, exercise strategies that can also trigger this system. But if we can get this system back to working properly, then that stress level is brought down, and then that's helping with some of the triggers for the disease.
Right.
And then the other thing you said was interesting is that his growth was stunted. This isn't necessarily the disease that causes the stunting. In some people it is because they don't eat enough, so they get massive nutrient deficiencies. But a lot of the drugs that these patients have to take actually causes the stunting. So unfortunately, that's a side effect of steroids, and a lot of Crohn's patients when they're young, they're in these massive inflammatory episodes, so they're given a lot of steroids, and it can really mess up their height. And so that's another reason why cannabis could be very helpful, because it can target the inflammation, but it's not going to stunt your growth.
Right.
And then finally, your third point about can cannabis put these patients, like, can it cure the disease? Well, at this point in time, there is no cure for the disease, so we can't really say that, but it definitely can help patients get into a state of remission and stay in remission. And there's really only one clinical trial looking at this. So Dr. Naftali, a group from Israel, they did a double-blind clinical trial with looking at smoked cannabis and Crohn's disease. And so they had two groups. It was a small study, 21 patients, but these patients were unresponsive to steroids, TNF-alpha blockers, all these other conditions, so they had no hope for them, basically. And then they put them on cannabis, smoked cannabis with about 150 milligrams of THC. And it was a neat study because the blinded group also were smoking cannabis cigarettes, but they didn't have any THC in them. They had developed a method to take the THC out, so they could have a true blinded study And so they found that the patients who consumed cannabis had less pain, had less anxiety, and even I think 3 of the patients were able to go off all their steroids, so it could help with reducing some of the medication. So, sorry, I'm getting caught up in the comments.
I know, I read them too, I know, because he's like,
oh,
7 years remission.
Yeah,
Does Natasha come across regards to cannabis and NCL diseases? Someone asked about celiac disease.
Yeah.
We'll try to answer. You guys got to slow down
You
a
guys
bit.
can also email me or hit me up on Twitter at Tashryz, TASHRYZ. I talk gut stuff and answer questions on there. So if I don't get to your question, ask me another time and I'll get to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the main things that cannabis is going to do for Crohn's is it's going to target the inflammation. It's going to help with the symptoms. But we should also think about all the different ways of consuming cannabis, because just smoking or vaping cannabis has some benefits. But for patients with Crohn's, the issue's in the gut. So they want to be consuming, using it intrarectally, using it topically for stomach pains. And again, Crohn's and colitis is not, my Twitter was at Tashryz, TASHRYZ. Sorry.
No problem.
So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for cannabis for Crohn's and colitis, but more research is desperately needed because there's not a good amount of data that doctors can look at right now and say, like, they can trust. Whereas I'm trained to look at the basic animal models, the cell culture models, and so I can understand those mechanisms and I can understand how that can be translated to human studies. So we still need the clinical trials, though.
Right. So what do you think about the ability or the amount of people today that have just developed, celiacs or gluten intolerances? Obviously, the wheat has changed quite a bit. I personally am a believer that it's glycophosphates from Roundup that are doing it more so than just people becoming allergic out of the blue to gluten. But do you think, is there any literature that says maybe cannabis will be able to help some of these people? Because, man, half my friends seem to have celiac disease now or be gluten intolerant, and it's just a very sort of confusing thing in this day and age to see.
So celiac disease is a complicated condition also. Of course, these patients have to avoid gluten and stay on a strict gluten-free diet, but even that, patients can follow that and still have issues. And then a lot of these patients find out that they have other issues, like they may be sensitive to dairy, or they have to find other foods that they can't tolerate. So a big part of this condition is keeping a food diary and being really like what works for you. It's going to be different for every patient. But cannabis can really help with celiac disease, just for pain, for inflammation, because what's happening is it's an allergic response to gluten in the gut, and it's causing gut inflammation, gut barrier disruption. It's changing up the gut bacteria so that you're getting issues with overgrowth of bacteria. So all these other things are also contributing to the disease. So if cannabis can help with these parts, it'll indirectly help with the condition. But I don't think it's going to be a point where, oh, you can take some cannabis and now you can eat gluten. Like, it's not going to help like that, but it can help with symptoms.
Cool. Well, that's very interesting work that you're doing. It seems to be so many different aspects of cannabis that you are able to focus on, and it's now that we're actually allowed to do this work. For the longest time we weren't. It's an exciting time, in my opinion, to be an educated person involved in this level of, this new cannabis education that's going on right now. We're going to share this message literally with 10 to 20,000 people in the next 7 days that watch this video. So really, thank you for coming on and sharing your time. I really appreciate it. Yeah, that was amazing. I know the group really liked it. Everyone was. If you guys have any more questions in the chat room, she's still sitting here next to me, and I should probably answer. Let's see. Or just hit her up on Twitter. Hey, why don't I punch your Twitter account into? It's, what is it?
At Tashryz.
At
TASHRYZ.
Let's put it in the chat for you guys there.
Natasha Riz.
Is this IBD sufferer and cannabis cultivator here, and using cannabis helps? Absolutely, it does. It heals my psoriasis. Not time. But, yeah.
Psoriasis, someone just wrote a comment about psoriasis. Psoriasis is an interesting condition because it has similarities to Crohn's disease in the type of immune response. So cannabis definitely can help with psoriasis also, and it's targeting Th17 immune responses if you want to get geeky and look into that.
They do. That's Hash Church is all about getting geeky. It's all about getting as educated as possible and sort of normalizing this information in a context that sort of puts us all together instead of divides and separates us into different groups. So yeah, once again, really thanks for coming on and sharing that information. I wish I could have seen you speak, but I did get to sit next to you and listen to you speak, so that's very nice.
All right.
It's yeah, thank you so much. I'm gonna call it short here, guys. I have not been at my booth all day. I was gonna go till 2 o'clock, but I think we're gonna just cut it short as we have the short, small panel. Thank everyone for coming. Mr. Scaldone making it in, Johnny B for walking around the rooms, and Skunkman Sam. We had Todd and Etienne and Tony in earlier. Thanks all the guests from Joel and Chris Bennett and Rob Laurie and Dr. Tash, all of them. Thank you so much for being a part of Hash Church here at the Cannabis and Hemp Conference, the Vancouver Cannabis and Hemp Conference. And thanks Cambridge House, and thanks Harley and Salome and all the people that made it possible here. Just obviously thank the people who are constantly showing up for Hash Church every Sunday. You, the audience, make it possible for us to want to be here and share our knowledge. So thanks, everybody. It's been a great day. We'll see you for episode 95 in about a week. Peace out.
And Marcus, maybe you can mention that next week we could talk about CBD.
Peace, guys. Have a great day.
About what, Sam? Sorry?
With Fred Gardner. I think he'll be talking about CBD next week.
Oh, wonderful. Right. We're going to have Fred Gardner on next week, so he's going to be coming in and talking about CBD. I know Chimera's going to make it in for that. I think it'll be a really great dialogue, so try not to miss it, guys. Peace out.